Chapter 1482. Gui Yen Tian and Gui Hao were the first and second holy princes of the ghost race. They were ranked 4th and 5th on the holy list respectively. Their strength was indeed incomparably formidable. Their cultivation had probably already reached the sage small perfection level after they had received the heavenly Dipper inheritance. They had the cultivation of sage perfection realm. However, it would be a big mistake to treat them as ordinary sage realm experts. This was because their battle prowess was probably enough to contend against a quasi-sage great venerable. It was impossible for ordinary people to defeat an opponent who was a whole realm above them after reaching the saint realm. However, it was completely possible for Gui Yentian and Gui Hao. Because both of them were chosen on the saint rankings, and they were even ranked in the top 10 of the saint rankings. Their natural talent and combat strength couldn't be described as exaggerated. So, they absolutely couldn't be treated as part of the younger generation because they had gradually grown up. Yanyangzi's expression didn't change much when he heard Gui Mu's words. However, a trace of worry flashed through his eyes. Gui Mu caught the worry in Yanyangzi's eyes and sneered. Then, he attacked Yanyangzi. Thus, right now, it is still our ghost clan that holds the advantage. Just stay here and watch how our ghost clan's younger generation slaughters your human clan's younger generation. He once again engaged in battle with Yanyangzi. While many experts were fighting fiercely in the void, the situation in the outside world had completely changed. Just as Gui Mu had said, no one in the human clan could stop Gui Yentian and Gui Hao. At this moment, the two of them were practically unstoppable as they slaughtered the human clan cultivators along the way. Half-saints, Tao emperors, Tao kings, no matter what their cultivation was, they were no match for the two of them. There were no saints in the outside world, so Gui Yentian and Gui Hao were naturally invincible. Even Chen Yu, Qin Shuru Yun Kunyo, and the other holy sons of the human clan were no match for the two of them. It seemed that no one could stop Gui Yentian and his companion. The human side would be in danger if they continued to be killed like this. At the same time, the half-sage experts of the dragon race who had come to support them were scared out of their wits by Gui Yentian and his companion. They didn't dare to attack them. They only turned towards the human side and roared furiously. Where are your human holy sons? Why aren't you stopping them? In fact, the chosens of the human race had already made their moves. Qin Shuru, the three girls, and Chen Yu were all holding back the other chosens of the ghost race. However, no one could deal with Gui Yentian and Gui Hao. Seeing that the two of them were getting more and more excited as they killed, there was no other choice. In the end, Yun Kunyo, Pu Minglian, Hua Wushuang, and Chen Yu joined forces and barely stopped Gui Hao. However, they only managed to stop him and didn't gain any advantage. The four of them joined forces to stop Gui Hao. As for Qin Shuru and the other holy sons of the human race, they couldn't get away at all. After all, Gui Yentian and Gui Hao weren't the only two holy sons of the ghost race. For example, although Gui Min's strength was far inferior to Gui Yentian and Gui Hao's, he was still extremely powerful. Qin Shuru and the other two girls joined forces to stop Gui Min. Gui Hao didn't show the slightest fear when he was stopped. He smiled at Gui Yentian and said, "Senior brother, don't worry about me. Just continue killing these human ants." Gui Hao gestured to Gui Yentian that he didn't need help. Gui Yentian didn't hesitate and charged towards the human race cultivators. They tried their best to stop Gui Hao. However, Gui Yentian, who was even more powerful, was left. The human race had no way to stop him. In the end, there was no other way. More than 100 semi-sage experts attacked together. They wanted to use their numbers to stall Gui Yentian. The method was indeed effective. More than 100 semi-sage experts attacked together. Gui Yentian was indeed stalled. However, these semi-sage experts began to fall one after another. There was no other way. Gui Yentian's cultivation had reached the peak of sage perfection realm. The semi-sage experts were like paper in front of him. They couldn't withstand a single blow. They were using human lives to stall Gui Yentian. However, there was no other way. If they didn't do this, Gui Yentian would be even more undisciplined and out of control. Gui Yentian was such an existence. He was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Wherever Gui Yentian rushed, someone would fall. He killed to his heart's content. The dragon race cultivators were completely terrified when facing Gui Yentian, who was like a god of death. They were completely avoiding Gui Yentian. What a joke! They had come to support the human race. However, they hadn't come to fight with their lives on the line. Gui Yentian's strength made these dragon race cultivators not dare to step forward. Only the human race cultivators were using their own lives to stall Gui Yentian because they had nowhere to retreat. Gui Yentian had no interest in these ants. After killing a half-saint of the human race with a single punch, he glanced indifferently at the human martialists around him and said flatly, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. I heard that Shao Chen killed Xianyuan Baijian. Now, he is the first holy son of the human race. Where is he? The first against the first. What's wrong? Could it be that he doesn't dare to fight with me?" Gui Yentian took the initiative to mention Shao Chen. However, everyone present became silent when they heard this. Moreover, a trace of hatred and disdain appeared in the eyes of many people. There had been a rumor in the Clear Sky City that Shao Chen was afraid of Gui Yentian. Therefore, he had used seclusion as an excuse to avoid meeting him. But now, Gui Yentian had taken the initiative to mention Shao Chen. This made everyone feel that Shao Chen was afraid of Gui Yentian. Many people secretly cursed Shao Chen in their hearts. They felt that he didn't deserve to be the first holy son of the human race. Gui Yentian sneered when he saw everyone's promise. "Are you a coward? Ha, very boring." Shao Chen didn't appear at all. Gui Yentian didn't feel like talking nonsense and continued to attack. While Gui Yentian was slaughtering in the Wanha mountain range, a terrifying aura suddenly soared into the sky from the secret room where Shao Chen was in seclusion in the Clear Sky City. This aura had broken through the small Perfection Saint realm and entered the Great Perfection Saint realm. Shao Chen had broken through. Naturally, many people in the Clear Sky City noticed the appearance of this aura. Those who had stayed in the Clear Sky City gathered outside Shao Chen's residence. Now that the battle in the Wanha mountain range had begun and Shao Chen had successfully broken through, this was naturally good news for the human race. About an hour later, the aura slowly disappeared. Then, Shao Chen's figure slowly walked out of the courtyard. After breaking through to the Great Perfection Saint realm, Shao Chen's cultivation had finally caught up with the Divine Emperor, Tian Mushi, and Long Yang. The people who had been guarding outside the courtyard were all stunned when they saw Shao Chen come out of seclusion. They stared blankly at Shao Chen as he walked slowly towards them. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1483. Because the experts of the human race had all gathered in the Myriad Harmony mountain range, those who remained in Clear Sky City were either old, weak, sick, or disciples who were not even Tao kings. When he saw Shao Chen walk out of the courtyard, a half-saint old man who led the group took the initiative to bow. "Greetings, chosen one." Shao Chen nodded slightly in response to the old man's greeting before asking curiously, "Where are the others?" Logically speaking, Shao Chen should have taken some time to stabilize his cultivation after making a breakthrough. However, after making the breakthrough, Shao Chen released his divine consciousness and found that Qin Shuru and the other two girls had disappeared. Moreover, he could not feel any powerful aura in the entire Haotian city. There was not even a single aura of the Saint realm. All the saints in Clear Sky City, as well as the quasi-saints, great sovereigns, and the great sage, had disappeared. That was why Shao Chen had chosen to leave seclusion and see what was going on. The old man naturally did not hide anything from Shao Chen's question. He immediately told Xiao Chen about the myriad Harmony mountain range. He had heard that the ghost race had launched a large-scale attack, and that a war had broken out between the two races in the myriad Harmony mountain range. Moreover, Qin Shuru, the three women, Chen Yu, Yun Kunyo, and the other experts of the Yin and Yang sects had all hurried to the myriad Harmony mountain range. He had never thought that something so major would happen while he was in seclusion. Xiao Chen said without any hesitation, "Open the teleportation formation. I want to head to the myriad Harmony mountain range immediately." Xiao Chen was about to head to the myriad Harmony mountain range. The old man was stunned when he heard that, but he immediately nodded in response. Xiao Chen's actions had somewhat exceeded the old man's expectations. After all, there had always been rumors in Clear Sky City that Xiao Chen had chosen to enter seclusion because he was afraid of the first chosen one of the ghost race, Gui Yantian. However, judging from the current situation, that was not the case. First of all, Xiao Chen had indeed made a breakthrough in his cultivation. Furthermore, as soon as he came out of his closed-door training, Xiao Chen chose to rush to the Wanhe mountain range as soon as he heard about what had happened there. Could it be that Xiao Chen was afraid of Gui Yantian? Just think about it. If the rumors were true, and Xiao Chen had chosen to enter seclusion because he was afraid of Gui Yantian, would Xiao Chen have chosen to leave seclusion at this time? Would he choose to rush to the Thousand Harmony mountain range without any hesitation after hearing about it? After meeting Xiao Chen in person, the old man scoffed at those rumors. As the first holy son of the human race, Xiao Chen had never been afraid of Gui Yantian. Unfortunately, some people with ulterior motives had made a fuss about this and vilified Xiao Chen. The old man hesitated. He didn't know if he should tell Xiao Chen about it. Seeing the old man's hesitant manner, Xiao Chen said flatly, "What's the matter? Do you have something to say?" The old man's expression clearly indicated that he had something to say. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, the old man gritted his teeth and told Xiao Chen about the rumors in Clear Sky City. In the old man's opinion, Xiao Chen had the right to know about it. Besides, the people who spread the rumors behind the scenes were really despicable. In the old man's opinion, Xiao Chen was obviously wronged. He thought that Xiao Chen would be furious after hearing the rumors. Even if he wasn't, he would definitely be displeased. But who knew that after hearing the old man's words, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change at all. He didn't seem angry at all. Seeing that Xiao Chen was actually so calm, the old man asked cautiously, "Holy Son, these people are so despicable to spread the rumors. Don't tell me you're not. I'm not angry, am I?" Xiao Chen replied nonchalantly before the old man could finish his sentence. The old man nodded. Xiao Chen chuckled and said, "What can I do even if I'm angry? What can I do even if I'm unhappy? Besides, who can these rumors represent? Will I lose a piece of flesh because of these rumors? So, there's no need to care about them." Xiao Chen couldn't care less about these rumors. As they spoke, they arrived at the teleportation array. The array activated and the old man said to Xiao Chen, "Holy Son, the teleportation array can send you directly out of the Wanhe mountain range. As for the deeper parts, you'll be able to see the human race's encampment." "Yes, thank you for your trouble." Xiao Chen nodded and then stepped into the teleportation array and disappeared. Unaware that Xiao Chen had already come out of seclusion, the battle in the Wanhe mountain range had already reached its climax. The experts of the human race, ghost race, and dragon race were fighting fiercely. In the battle between great sage emperors, quasi-sage great venerables, and saints, the strength of both sides was about the same, and the human race was indeed able to contend with the ghost race. However, the ghost race had an overwhelming advantage in the battles below the saint realm. The reason for this was the ghost race's #1 holy son, Gui Yantian. No one from the human race or dragon race could stop Gui Yantian. This directly led to Gui Yantian slaughtering over 10,000 human race cultivators by himself. Practically all of them were killed in a single strike. As more and more people were killed by Gui Yentian, the morale of the human race cultivators plummeted. At the same time, many people's hatred for Shao Chen grew thicker and thicker. As the number one holy son of the human race, Shao Chen had not appeared at this time. This indeed caused many human race cultivators to feel rather dissatisfied. They simply could not find anyone who could defend themselves. Under the frenzied slaughter, Gui Yentian said extremely arrogantly, "The human race really is weak. Don't you even have a capable person? Where's your number one holy son, Shao Chen? Tell him to come out." Since Shao Chen was not around, Gui Yentian sneered without restraint. This was not the first time Gui Yentian had said something like this. However, this time, just as Gui Yentian finished speaking, an indifferent voice, influenced by spiritual energy, instantly exploded in the air above the battlefield. "Gui Yentian, are you in such a hurry to die?" The sudden voice caused Gui Yentian's hand movements to pause. At the same time, the cultivators of the three clans all looked towards the horizon, only to see a white-clothed youth standing proudly there. The young man in white was Shao Chen, who had rushed over from Clear Sky City. Due to the teleportation formation, Shao Chen basically did not take much time to arrive at the Myriad Harmony mountain range. He just happened to hear Gui Yentian's words earlier. Qin Shuru Qianqian and the others from the sacred palace rejoiced when they saw Shao Chen in the sky. However, the other human race cultivators had mixed expressions. They had previously hated Shao Chen and felt that Shao Chen was unworthy of being the number one holy son of the human race. However, for some reason, their hatred quickly dissipated when they truly faced Shao Chen. Or perhaps it was better to say that they did not dare to vent their anger on Shao Chen. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1484. Everyone had different expressions as they looked at the white-clothed figure standing proudly in the sky. Even Gui Yentian, who was extremely arrogant earlier, was slightly taken aback at this moment. However, he quickly regained his senses. His figure rose into the air and quickly arrived in front of Shao Chen. The first holy son of the two races stood facing each other. Gui Yentian sneered as he looked at Shao Chen. "Shao Chen, what's wrong? You're not going to continue being a coward?" Shao Chen did not reply to Gui Yentian's words. Instead, he looked down at the battle below. He saw that the human side had indeed fallen into a complete disadvantage. Although Shao Chen had not seen what had just happened, he could guess from the corpses all over the ground that Gui Yentian had killed a lot of human martialists because no one in the human race could stop him. Before Shao Chen had arrived, Gui Yentian had indeed acted as if there was no one there, killing many human cultivators. Only after looking at the corpses below did Shao Chen turn his attention back to Gui Yentian. He said coldly, "You'll pay for the lives of the human cultivators with your life." Gui Yentian's wanton slaughter had caused Shao Chen's killing intent to soar. Shao Chen did not know many of these human cultivators. They had even cursed Shao Chen in their hearts before, feeling that Shao Chen was unworthy of being the first holy son of the human race. However, no matter what, they were Shao Chen's companions now that they were facing an alien race. They were all comrades who fought side by side. When facing an alien race, the racial relationship was the strongest. Because they were all from the same race, no matter what kind of grudges they had before, when facing an alien race, everyone would stand together. It was for no other reason than the fact that they had the same blood flowing in their bodies. Gui Yentian sneered when he heard Shao Chen's words and sensed the faint killing intent radiating from Shao Chen. "Who do you think you are? Long Yang? Tianmushi? A divine lord? Do you have the ability to kill me?" Among the younger generation in the Central World, Gui Yentian was only afraid of Long Yang and the other two. As for Shao Chen, to be honest, Gui Yentian didn't take him seriously at all. However, an aura suddenly surged from Shao Chen's body after Gui Yentian spoke. The smile on Gui Yentian's face instantly vanished when he sensed this aura. His voice also came to a halt. He was like a duck that had been grabbed by the neck, unable to make a single sound. Gui Yentian was dumbstruck as he looked at Xiao Chen. He hadn't expected that Xiao Chen had already broken through to the sage accomplished realm. You? How is this possible? How did you break through to the sage perfection realm? As the Holy Sun ranked fourth on the holy list, Gui Yentian's cultivation was only at the small perfection sage realm. On the other hand, Xiao Chen had already broken through to the great perfection sage realm. Gui Yentian wasn't the only one who was shocked. The complexions of the other people from the two clans also changed. The people from the human clan were wild with joy as they looked at Xiao Chen in the sky. On the other hand, the people from the ghost clan looked solemn. Gui Hao was fighting fiercely with Qin Yu's group of 4. However, he didn't look as relaxed as before when he faced Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen had broken through to the sage accomplished realm. How was this possible? His heart was filled with shock. However, Xiao Chen clearly didn't care about this. He calmly looked at Gui Yentian and said indifferently, "We'll know whether it's possible or not after we fight." After saying that, Xiao Chen moved his will. The dustless sword instantly appeared in his hand. Then, he slashed at Gui Yentian. Xiao Chen didn't give Gui Yentian any chance to retaliate. After his cultivation had broken through to the great perfection sage realm, Xiao Chen's battle prowess had skyrocketed once again. Moreover, Xiao Chen had also practiced the Scorching Sun sword technique and the Absolute Yin footwork technique to perfection. That terrifying flaming sword ferociously attacked Gui Yentian. Gui Yentian's complexion turned solemn as he faced Xiao Chen's attack. However, he still stretched out both of his hands. Soon, a layer of dense ghost energy condensed in front of him to block Xiao Chen's sword. Gui Yentian successfully blocked Xiao Chen's attack as the sword came down. However, this was clearly just the beginning. Xiao Chen did not give Gui Yentian any chance to react. At that moment, Xiao Chen was already on top of him. The sword domain and the law of gravity burst in an instant. Gui Yentian was instantly enveloped by Xiao Chen's domain. Gui Yentian also didn't hesitate to use the Ghost Clan's magical ability, ghost energy filling the sky. Xiao Chen was no stranger to ghost energy filling the sky. Whether it was Mo Xie or Gui Min, they had both used ghost energy filling the sky. Although Gui Yentian's ghost energy filling the sky was stronger than Gui Min's, Xiao Chen wasn't the same as before. His cultivation had already broken through to the great perfection sage realm. Therefore, when faced with Gui Yentian's ghost energy filling the sky, Xiao Chen sneered. Ghost energy filling the sky? Do you think this move will still work? In fact, there was no need to doubt the power of ghost energy filling the sky. As one of the most powerful magical abilities of the Ghost Clan, the power of ghost energy filling the sky was very strong. However, there was a gap between Xiao Chen and Gui Yentian's cultivation. Therefore, Gui Yentian's ghost energy filling the sky didn't have much effect on Xiao Chen. After saying that, Xiao Chen's flame law soared into the sky. His entire body was enveloped by scorching flames. The flame law was only a level 1 law. However, it wasn't weak in Xiao Chen's hands. Moreover, the flame law had a certain restraining effect on the Ghost Clan's ghost energy. Without wasting any time, Xiao Chen held his sword and charged forward. He immediately engaged in a fierce battle with Gui Yentian. Both of them were the first holy son of their respective clans. Now, the first holy son was fighting the first holy son. However, in the fierce battle, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Xiao Chen had the upper hand. In fact, when Xiao Chen revealed his cultivation, Gui Yentian already knew that he couldn't defeat Xiao Chen. After all, he was a holy son of the saint rankings. Moreover, he was a holy son of the saint rankings. Moreover, he was one of the top 10 holy sons of the saint rankings. It could be said that Xiao Chen didn't hold back at all. Under Xiao Chen's violent attacks, Gui Yantian could only bitterly hold on. At most, a year ago, Xiao Chen was nothing in Gui Yantian's eyes. However, in a mere year, Xiao Chen had already surpassed him. Even when fighting Xiao Chen, Gui Yantian had a misconception. It was as if he wasn't facing Xiao Chen, but Long Yang and the other two. Could it be that Xiao Chen already possessed the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with Long Yang and the other two? He was overwhelmed with shock. Gui Yantian continued to complain. On the other hand, when the human cultivators saw that Xiao Chen had suppressed Gui Yantian, they were naturally incomparably excited. The complaints and mockery from before had completely disappeared. Even now, if someone dared to say that Xiao Chen was afraid of the first holy son of the Ghost Clan, Gui Yantian, everyone would probably stand up for Xiao Chen. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 1485. The appearance of Xiao Chen and the combat prowess that he had displayed had greatly boosted the morale of the human side. The human warriors took the initiative to attack the Ghost Clan warriors, as they had been in a disadvantageous position before. Due to Xiao Chen's appearance, the human side's morale had risen greatly. However, the Ghost cultivators' morale had plummeted. Below, the two sides were still fighting in a chaotic battle. In the sky, Xiao Chen and Gui Yantian were also locked in a fierce battle. Gui Yantian could be said to be holding nothing back against Xiao Chen. He had also pushed the ghost qi to its limit. Unfortunately, he was still unable to suppress Xiao Chen. The difference in cultivation, the difference of a minor level, made Gui Yantian completely helpless before Xiao Chen. His body flickered with a dense golden light as he activated the tempered battle body. Aside from that, sharp sword qi also revolved around Xiao Chen. Gui Yantian did not dare to be careless with every slash of his sword. In the fierce battle, Xiao Chen became fiercer and fiercer. However, Gui Yantian became more and more alarmed. On one hand, he was unwilling to believe that Xiao Chen actually possessed such strength. On the other hand, reality kept waking him up. After experiencing the Heavenly Dipper inheritance, Gui Yantian had originally thought that he had improved greatly. Perhaps he had already closed the gap between him and Long Yang and the other two. However, who would have thought that not only would the gap not be closed, but on the contrary, he would be overtaken by Xiao Chen instead? Xiao Chen, who he had originally looked down on, had now beaten Gui Yantian into submission. This was indeed something that Gui Yantian had not expected. He was extremely depressed, but there was nothing he could do. Xiao Chen kept pestering him. Gui Yantian had no choice but to fight back. With the terror of the tempered battle body, Xiao Chen did not care about trading injuries with Gui Yantian. The more Gui Yantian fought, the more aggrieved he felt. However, at this moment, Xiao Chen's sword slashed down. He instantly executed the Scorching Sun sword art. The Scorching Sun sword art formed by the law of fire fiercely attacked Gui Yantian. Gui Yantian immediately chose to block this attack. However, just as Gui Yantian was about to block the Scorching Sun sword technique, Xiao Chen pointed out with his finger. The Scarlet Heaven sword finger erupted at this moment. The fiery red sword tip streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning. Although Gui Yantian immediately put up a defense, it was quickly broken through by the Scarlet Heaven sword finger. The sword tip directly hit Gui Yantian. Han Sun had successfully injured Gui Yantian, but he had not been able to heavily injure him. After Red Cloud Finger struck Gui Yantian's body, it seemed to have been blocked by something. It did not pierce through Gui Yantian's body. All it did was leave behind a bloody hole. Xiao Chen was not surprised that he had not been able to heavily injure Gui Yantian with a single attack. After all, Gui Yantian was a chosen ranked 4th on the Saint rankings. If he could be heavily injured so easily, then Gui Yantian would not be worthy of his reputation. Gui Yantian was clearly much stronger than Xianyuan Baijian, so this result was acceptable. However, Xiao Chun did not stop because of this. He did not stop attacking, and the dustless sword slashed down once again. He did not give Gui Yantian any chance to rest at all. The fierce battle continued. Faced with Xiao Chen's storm-like attacks, Gui Yantian's situation became worse and worse. Xiao Chun had the tempered battle body. His physical strength was above Gui Yantian's. At the same time, Xiao Chen's cultivation was a minor realm higher than Gui Yantian's, so the amount of spiritual energy within his body clearly surpassed Gui Yantian's. As time went on, Gui Yantian found it harder and harder to hold on. Many wounds had already appeared on his body, and blood constantly flowed out from them. On the other hand, Xiao Chun had not changed much despite having experienced a great battle. His aura was still extremely powerful. Gui Yantian was no longer a match for Xiao Chun at all. At this point in the battle, Gui Yantian was also thinking of retreating. Although Gui Yantian knew very well that if he retreated, the morale of the ghost race would instantly plummet, what could he do about it? He could not continue fighting to the death with Xiao Chun. If he continued to tangle with Xiao Chun, his life would definitely be in danger in the end. Perhaps he really would be killed by Xiao Chun. Compared to his own life, the defeat of the ghost race was naturally no longer important. Thinking of that, Gui Yantian already considered retreating. He still had the strength to retreat. He could not continue to tangle with Xiao Chun. Looking at Xiao Chun with eyes filled with hatred, Gui Yantian said coldly, "Xiao Chun, I will remember today's matter." With that, not only did the surrounding ghost qi gather towards Gui Yantian, but the ghost qi around Xiao Chun also slowly dissipated. Boundless ghost qi converged towards the ghost flame sky. Seeing this scene, Gui Hao, who was engaged in an intense battle with Chun Yu and the other three, had an extremely ugly expression on his face. He naturally knew what Gui Yantian wanted to do. He gritted his teeth and thought unwillingly, "Do I still have to run?" Gui Yantian was currently using one of the ghost race's escape abilities. It was called Ghost Concealment. It did not have any offensive power. It only had one use, and that was to escape. It was probably the strongest escape ability of the ghost race. Who would have thought that Gui Yantian would be forced to use Ghost Concealment? From this, it could be seen that the gap between him and Xiao Chun was not small. It was also hard to imagine that Xiao Chun had grown to such a level in such a short period of time. Gui Hao was also extremely depressed in his heart, but since things had already come to this, what could he change? Even Gui Yantian was no match for Xiao Chun. If Gui Hao went up, he would just be sending himself to death. The ghost qi around Gui Yantian grew denser and denser. At the same time, Gui Yantian's aura gradually became blurry. It felt as if Gui Yantian was still in front of him, but he had actually fled far away. Seeing that Gui Yantian wanted to escape, Xiao Chun did not hesitate and directly slashed down with his sword. He coldly shouted, "Do you think you can escape?" The sword sliced through the air, but what was strange was that even though the sword had clearly struck Gui Yantian, the sword passed right through his body. It was as if the Gui Yantian in front of him was nothing more than an illusion. This was all thanks to Gui Yinzi. However, although Gui Yinzi was very powerful at escaping, the price he had to pay for using it was not low. At the very least, Gui Yantian would not be able to use Gui Yinzi's divine ability for a very long time. Gui Yantian did not expect to be forced to such a state by Xiao Chun. After his sword missed, he looked at Xiao Chun savagely and said, "Xiao Chun, today's matter is not over. Just you wait." He did not forget to leave a threat before leaving. However, hearing that, Xiao Chun did not care at all. He said indifferently, "Today you are not my match. In the future, the gap between us will only grow. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1486. Gui Yentian had used ghost concealment, and after that sword strike, Shao Chen knew that it was impossible for him to keep Gui Yentian here. Although he could defeat Gui Yentian, it would be difficult to kill him. After all, Gui Yentian was no ordinary character. Although he couldn't do it this time, he might be able to next time. Of course, Shao Chen didn't know that ghost concealment came at a great cost to Gui Yentian. If Gui Yentian encountered Shao Chen again in the future, he wouldn't be able to use ghost concealment again. Shao Chen let Gui Yentian leave. Shao Chen did not care about his threat at all. It was just as Shao Chen had said earlier. If Gui Yentian was no match for him today, what could he change in the future? One had to know that Shao Chen had been able to catch up and even surpass Gui Yentian. In the future, the gap between the two would only widen. The dense ghost qi slowly dissipated, along with Gui Yentian's figure. Gui Yentian had escaped. After a fierce battle with Shao Chen, he had escaped with serious injuries. Facing such an outcome, the human race side was naturally overjoyed, but the ghost race side's expression changed drastically. Previously, no one in the human race could stop Gui Yentian, so he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, slaughtering tens of thousands of human race cultivators by himself. Now that Gui Yentian had escaped, who in the ghost race side could stop Shao Chen? Could they rely on Gui Hao? Obviously not. Even Gui Yentian couldn't, let alone Gui Hao. Unknowingly, the situation had been completely reversed. After Gui Yentian, Shao Chen had become the nightmare of many ghost race cultivators. Sure enough, just as these ghost race cultivators' expressions changed, Shao Chen's indifferent gaze swept over them. When Shao Chen's gaze swept over them, these ghost race cultivators felt a chill run down their spines. At the same time, the Supreme Elder of the Ghost King Palace, the great sovereign of the Ghost Clan, who was trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation, bellowed furiously. Shao Chen, if you dare to kill a member of the Ghost Clan, I will never let you off. This ghost race great sovereign was indeed in a miserable state. Trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation, he had no way to escape for a while. He had great strength, but there was no way to use it. Moreover, he had seen the whole process of Shao Chen defeating Gui Yentian. To be honest, this Ghost Supreme was also very confident in Shao Chen's combat strength. Shao Chen's combat strength was almost on par with Long Yang and the other two. With such strength, even Gui Yentian fled. If Shao Chen attacked the ghost race martial artists at this time, it would absolutely be a disaster. However, in the face of this ghost race great sovereign's threat, Shao Chen only glanced at him indifferently and sneered. You're already a clay bodhisattva crossing the river, yet you still have the mood to threaten others. Although Shao Chen did not know what had happened, it was not difficult for him to see that this ghost race great sovereign was trapped at this time and could not attack at all. Since he was already a trapped person, what could he do even if he had the cultivation of great sage realm? Therefore, in the face of this ghost race great sovereign's threat, Shao Chen did not take it seriously at all. As soon as he finished speaking, Shao Chen took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in front of the ghost race martial artists. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he slashed out with the dustless sword in his hand. These ghost race martial artists were only at the Tao Emperor stage. Such a cultivation base was completely insufficient before Shao Chen. With a single slash of his sword, he instantly killed over 20 of them. The surrounding ghost race martial artists were terrified when they saw that over 20 people had been killed with a single slash of his sword. However, this was only the beginning. Without stopping, Shao Chen directly charged into the ghost race martial artists' camp. There was no need to be soft-hearted when dealing with the ghost race because if you did not kill them, they would kill you. If you did not kill these ghost race martial artists, even more people from the human race would be killed. For a time, shrill cries rose and fell. Just like when the human race faced Gui Yentian earlier, the ghost race felt despair when facing Xiao Chen. It was even worse than Gui Yantian. There was no doubt that Xiao Chen's strength was above Gui Yantian's. However, apart from strength, Xiao Xing's killing intent was even denser than Gui Yantian's. Moreover, Xiao Chen's speed of killing was also above Gui Yantian's. When Gui Yantian slaughtered the human race martial artists earlier, he could not help but show off a little. However, Xiao Chen was not so bored at all. He only killed. It was purely killing. In front of Xiao Chen, the noble martial artists were not living beings but a pile of weeds waiting to be harvested. Less than 100 breaths of time had passed since Xiao Chen made his move, and more than 200 ghost race martial artists had been killed. Faced with such a scene, the human race was excited, the dragon race was shocked, and the ghost race was terrified. The dragon race martial artists, who had been clamoring that the human race was incompetent, all shut their mouth. At the same time, their hearts were filled with shock. Xiao Chen, the first holy son of the human race, was actually this strong. In the eyes of these dragon race martial artists, Xiao Chen's strength was indeed comparable to Long Yang's. Inconceivable, simply inconceivable. The dragon race was incomparably shocked. However, someone from the ghost race shouted at this moment, "Stop him, stop him!" Hearing these angry shouts, the ghost race martial artists had no choice but to swarm forward and use their lives to stop Xiao Chen. It was a very familiar scene. Not long ago, the human race had also used human lives to stop Gui Yantian. But now, the ghost race had fallen into such a situation in the blink of an eye. Human lives. They could only use human lives to stop Xiao Chen. However, these ghost race martial artists could be killed with a single sword strike from Xiao Chen. As time passed, the number of martial artists of the ghost clan that Xiao Chen had on his hands increased. It was as if he was cutting vegetables. Ghost race martial artists' corpses fell from the sky one after another. However, no one dared to retreat because no one in the ghost race could stop Xiao Chen. If they left Xiao Chen alone, even more ghost race martial artists would die. There was no superfluous words. Unlike Gui Yantian, who showed off from time to time, Little Cheng did not say a single word when facing the ghost race cultivators. Only the dustless sword in his hand continued to slash out. The sky was filled with crazy sword edges, and the ghost race martial artists fell one after another. There was no pause in the slaughter. At this moment, Xiao Chen was like the incarnation of a god of death. His slaughter made the ghost race martial artists tremble in fear. He had become a nightmare in the hearts of many ghost race martial artists present. After this battle, the ghost race martial artists who were lucky enough to escape this calamity would probably involuntarily think of today when the name Xiao Chen was mentioned in the future. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1487. Xiao Xing's massacre terrified many ghost race martialists, and the massacre clearly did not stop. The experts of the two races were in a fierce battle at this time, so naturally, no one could stop Xiao Chen. The corpses of the ghost race martialists fell from the sky one after another. Just as Xiao Chen signaled for the massacre of the ghost race martialists, there seemed to be a faintly discernible cry in the sky. Then, blood-colored rain fell from the sky. Rain of blood fell from the sky, which meant that at least a saint had fallen. However, the martialists of the two races did not care about this. It was very normal for a saint to fall in a battle of such a scale. Not to mention a saint, even a quasi-saint great venerate might fall. As the rain of blood fell, a spatial crack appeared in the sky. Then, the corpse of a human race saint fell from the void. It was a human race saint who had fallen. However, in just a few breaths of time, another spatial crack appeared. This time, it was a ghost race saint who had fallen. The rain of blood in the sky became heavier and heavier, and the corpses of saints kept falling from the void. As these saints continued to fall, there were finally quasi-saint great sovereigns who had fallen. The first quasi-saint great venerate to fall was an elder of a quasi-saint great clan of the human race. He only had the cultivation of a quasi-saint great clan. Even so, he was a genuine quasi-saint great venerate. Normally, he would definitely be an overlord. However, at this moment, he had fallen in such a meat-grinder-like battlefield. Following the fall of the quasi-saint great venerate, the rain of blood in the sky became heavier, just like a rainstorm on a normal day. The cries from the sky also became louder and louder. The rain of blood filled the sky, but even so, the battle still had no intention of stopping. Neither the ghost race nor the human race retreated. The human race had no way out and could not retreat. Because once they retreated, the ghost race would be able to drive straight into the human race's territory and kill their way into it. As for the ghost race, in their opinion, perhaps it was the pride in their hearts that prevented them from lowering their heads to the human race. After all, since ancient times, the ghost clan had always felt that they were stronger than the human clan. The human clan had always lived under the pressure of the ghost clan. There were even a few times in history where the human clan had almost been annihilated by the ghost clan. They had never been at a disadvantage in a battle with the human race, so this time, the ghost race believed that victory would definitely belong to them. However, the situation this time seemed to be a little different. Firstly, the human race had the help of the dragon race. Although the dragon race did not give their full support, the arrival of Long Cunyon had indeed made up for the gap in strength between the human race and the ghost race. The interference of the dragon clan was something that the ghost clan did not expect. This was the first reason. As for the second reason, it was Shao Chun. After defeating Gui Yentian and forcing him to flee with heavy injuries, who else in the ghost race would be able to stop Shao Chun? At this moment, Shao Chun was like the Grim Reaper, constantly reaping the lives of the ghost race cultivators. The ghost race could not do anything about it. The battle continued. Previously, Gui Yentian had killed the human race cultivators. Now, Shao Chun had similarly killed more than 10,000 ghost race cultivators. At the same time, this number was still increasing. Seeing Shao Chun reaping the lives of the ghost race cultivators with a single Jian Yi sword, the ghost race cultivator trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation shouted loudly. At this moment, his face was extremely gloomy. If this continued, who knew how many ghost race cultivators Shao Chun could kill in the end? No one could stop Shao Chun. Moreover, the battle in the void was becoming more and more intense. Saints, quasi-saints, and great venerables were constantly falling. Moreover, the frequency was still increasing. Blood rain fell from the sky as if it wanted to dye this space red. The rain that fell on the ground had almost formed a blood-red river. The trees and the land were already dyed red by the blood rain. Who would have thought that the battle would actually develop into this situation? More than once, he thought of ordering a retreat. However, the ghost race great saint trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation was unwilling to give up. Looking at the human race, he was unwilling to retreat like this. Moreover, if he retreated, it would be even more impossible to defeat the human race. On one hand, he wanted to fight to the death with the human race. On the other hand, he was in a dilemma as he watched the ghost race cultivators fall one after another. It was not that he did not dare to fight to the death with the human race. It was because during the 100 Race War, both the ghost race and the human race had to face more than just each other. They were not the only two races in the Central World. There were other races eyeing them covetously from the side. Once they fought with the human race here and suffered heavy casualties, their foundation would be damaged. What would the ghost race use to resist the other races? While he was in a dilemma, the number of ghost race cultivators who died at Shao Chen's hands had already reached 20,000. He'd slaughtered over 20,000 members of the ghost race by himself. Moreover, all of them were elites of the ghost race. Just like the human race, the weakest amongst the participating cultivators of the ghost race was at the Tao King realm. Xiao Chun alone had killed 20,000 of these elite cultivators. What kind of concept was this? Seeing that Xiao Chun was still killing wantonly, the great saint of the Ghost Clan, who was trapped in the sky-ceiling grand formation, could not help but shout, "Retreat!" In the end, he still gave the order to retreat. There was no other way. Xiao Chun alone had already suppressed many ghost race cultivators to the point of suffocation. If they did not deal with Xiao Chun, the ghost race would definitely lose this battle. No one could stop Xiao Chun. Even Gui Yantian was no match for Xiao Chun. Following the ghost race great saint's shout, the ghost race cultivators chose to retreat without any hesitation. However, because he was trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation, the Ghost Race Great Saint could not retreat even though he gave the order. Of course, outsiders could not enter the Sky Lock Grand Formation either. Seeing the Ghost Race cultivators quickly retreat, the Ghost Race Great Saint's expression was extremely gloomy. However, he did not say anything. Given the current situation, retreat was the best choice. While the battle in the outside world ended and the ghost tribe retreated, Yin Yangzi, Guifun, and the others who were fighting in the void also sensed the changes in the outside world. In fact, they already knew what had happened when Xiao Chun appeared. Xiao Chun had directly defeated Gui Yantian. This had already caused Gui Mu's expression to turn gloomy. On the contrary, Yin Yangzi was very happy. Xiao Chun had successfully broken through to the Sage Realm Great Perfection and defeated the Ghost Race's first holy son, Gui Yantian. How could Yin Yangzi not be happy? Gui Mu had previously said that no one in the human race could stop Gui Yantian. Now, Yin Yangzi had returned the same words to him. Who in the ghost race could stop Xiao Chun? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1488. The Ghost Clan cultivators outside had already retreated. In the air, Gui Mu, who was fighting fiercely with Yin Yangzi, had an ugly expression on his face, but he still maintained his rationality. After blocking Yin Yangzi's attack, Gui Mu took the initiative to retreat. Seeing this, Yin Yangzi did not stop him. At the Great Sage's level, it was very difficult to kill him. If the saints on the saint rankings were difficult to kill because they relied on various life-saving methods, then the Great Sage's life force was extremely vigorous. He did not need any trump cards. The Great Sage could stand there and be killed easily. Therefore, since Gui Mu chose to retreat, Yin Yangzi did not continue to pursue him. The outcome of the battle in the outside world had already been decided. At the same time, hundreds of spatial cracks appeared in the sky. After which, black-robed experts from the Ghost Clan flew out from the spatial black holes one after another. Soon after, they withdrew from the battlefield. The Ghost Clan cultivators also retreated. Then, Yin Yangzi and the other human clan cultivators appeared. This was the human clan's great sage battle. Successfully repelling the Ghost Clan's attack was inseparable from the Dragon Clan's support. Of course, it was also inseparable from Xiao Chun. If Xiao Chun had not defeated Gui Yantian and severely damaged the Ghost Clan's morale, and if Xiao Chun had not single-handedly slaughtered more than 20,000 Ghost Clan cultivators, the Ghost Clan would not have retreated so easily. All the Ghost Clan cultivators had fled, leaving only the Ghost Clan Great Sage trapped in the Skylock Grand Formation. It was not that he did not want to leave, but he could not leave at all. Trapped in the Skylock Grand Formation, the Ghost Clan Great Sage had no way to break free. Arriving at the Skylock Grand Formation, Yin Yangzi looked at the Ghost Clan Great Sage and said softly, "Lock him in the Skylock Grand Formation for now." Continuing to lock him in the Skylock Grand Formation was the safest method. Otherwise, releasing him would cause unnecessary trouble. Hearing Yin Yangzi's words, Xing Zhantian and Xianyuan Wudi did not object. As for Xianyuan Wudi, he unconsciously looked at Xiao Chen with a complicated expression. Xianyuan Wudi had seen Xiao Chen's battle prowess. However, He hadn't expected that Xiao Qin would have broken through to the sage-accomplished realm. Moreover, he had defeated Gui Yentian. He was already ranked 4th on the saint rankings. At this moment, the blood rain in the sky gradually stopped, and the light screen of the saint rankings appeared. The golden light scattered across the land like a rainbow after the rain. On the light screen of the saint rankings, Xiao Chen's ranking had risen from 10th place to 4th place, just behind Longyang, Tianmushi and the Divine Lord. Naturally, many people noticed the changes on the saint rankings. When they saw that it was Xiao Chen again, and that Xiao Chen had risen to 4th place this time, everyone was shocked. Throughout the central world, cultivators from various races were shocked by the changes on the saint rankings. At the same time, in the beast race, celestial race, and divine race, Longyang and the other two were also looking at the changes on the saint rankings with different thoughts. Longyang sat alone in the garden, bored. He looked at the light screen of the saint rankings in the sky with a faint smile. He really caught up. Interesting. In Tianmushi's dwelling in the celestial race, Tianmushi, who had been cultivating with her eyes closed, also looked at the light screen of the saint rankings in the sky with a smile on her face. Defeated Gui Yentian? Xiao Chen, you really haven't disappointed me. Longyang and Tianmushi had interacted with Xiao Chen in the past, but the Divine Lord didn't know much about Xiao Chen. Currently, in the divine race, the Divine Lord was also looking at the light screen of the saint rankings in the sky. A glint of light flashed through his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking, but a smile gradually appeared on his face. After defeating Gui Yentian, Xiao Chen had finally entered the first echelon of the saint rankings. His cultivation had completely caught up to Longyang and the other two. Although he didn't dare say that he could defeat the three of them, at the very least, Xiao Chen now had the ability to contend with the three of them. Of course, in the eyes of the world, Xiao Chen still couldn't be compared to Longyang and the other two. After all, Xiao Chen had only defeated Gui Yentian, and the former Gui Yentian couldn't be compared to Longyang and the other two at all. However, it wouldn't be long before this kind of thinking would change, because during the 100 Race War, Xiao Chen had plenty of opportunities to fight the three of them. After the battle ended, the great saint of the Ghost Clan was still trapped in the Skylock formation. Next, many human race cultivators began to clean up the battlefield and treat the wounded. Xiao Chen also followed Yin Yangzi and the others back to the human race's encampment. Although the human race had won the battle, they had also paid a heavy price. Not to mention those who died in the battle, even Yin Yangzi and the other two were injured. Of course, what worried Xiao Chen the most was Xiao Xing and the others. Although Qin Shuru and the other two women were also injured, their injuries weren't serious. However, Xiao Xing, Randeng, Mengjie, and Bing Lian's injuries were worse. In the battle with the Ghost Clan's quasi-sage Great Venerables, Xiao Xing and the other three had fought with their lives on the line. At the last moment, the Ghost Clan chose to retreat. Otherwise, if the battle had continued, Xiao Xing and the other three would have been in danger of dying. In this battle, a total of 39 quasi-saint and great venerables from both sides had died. Among them, the number of great saint and emperor venerables of the human race was higher, and more than 100 saints had died. As for the cultivators below them, the number of casualties was innumerable. Moreover, in addition to those who had died, there were even more people who were injured, and they were all seriously injured. Without a few months of recuperation, it was impossible for them to fully recover. It could be said that the two races had really gone all out in this battle, and the price they had paid was absolutely enormous. First, after settling down Qin Shuru and the other two women, Xiao Chen went directly to the residence of Xiao Xing and the other three. The injuries of the four were not light, but when Xiao Chen arrived, Xiao Xing had already been treated and was lying on the bed, resting. His face was pale, and his aura was extremely weak. Seeing Xiao Chen, Xiao Xing smiled slightly and said, Boy, not bad, your cultivation is almost catching up with mine. Xiao Xing's cultivation was at the great completion of the quasi-sage realm, and Xiao Chen's cultivation was at the sage perfection realm. Indeed, Xiao Chen's cultivation was almost catching up with Xiao Xing's. Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled slightly and didn't dwell on this issue. Instead, he asked with concern, "Old ancestor, how are you? Are you okay?" "I won't die, but I have to rest for a while." Xiao Xing smiled slightly. His life wasn't in danger, but his injuries were quite serious, and he needed to rest. Recently, Xiao Xing couldn't fight anymore. Hearing that his life wasn't in danger, Xiao Chen secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as his life wasn't in danger, it was fine. As for rest, there was no other way. Moreover, after this battle, Xiao Chen also felt that the ghost race wouldn't continue to fight to the death, unless the ghost race had lost their minds and wanted to perish together with the human race. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommend it. Chapter 1489. The human clan had paid a heavy price in this battle, but the ghost clan had paid an even greater price. They had suffered more casualties than the human clan. Perhaps the casualties of the two clans were about the same for those above the Saint realm. However, the casualties of the ghost clan cultivators below the Saint realm were far greater than that of the human clan. And the cause of all this was naturally Xiao Chen. Based on the current situation, it was already very difficult for the ghost clan to defeat the human clan. It could even be said that it was completely impossible. The great sage of the ghost clan had fallen into the hands of the human clan. If the ghost clan continued to fight, Yin Yangzi and the others would definitely kill the great sage without hesitation. Although the great sage was difficult to kill, it did not mean that it was impossible to kill him. At this time, the great sage of the ghost clan was trapped in the Skylock formation. His life and death were in the hands of Yin Yangzi and the others. With the great sage attacking at the same time, how could they not kill the great sage of the ghost clan? They had hostages and captives, and they were not simple captive. If the human clan had only captured a ghost clan saint, or even a quasi-saint great venerable, the ghost clan might not have cared. However, the human clan had captured the great sage of the ghost clan this time. After all, the great sage meant a lot to a clan. Even the ghost clan only had 5 the great sage in total. The loss of any one of them would be a great blow to the ghost clan. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, the ghost clan would not continue to fight the human clan. Moreover, if the ghost clan and the human clan fought until both sides suffered, the other clans would benefit in the end. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he chatted with Xiao Sheng for a while. Because Xiao Sheng was very weak at the moment and wanted to rest, Xiao Chen also got up and left. The human clan was doing their best to treat the wounded and clean up the battlefield, and so was the ghost clan. On the other side of the Wanha mountain range, in the aristocratic residence, the ghost clan was not in a good mood like the human clan. They thought that they could defeat the human race in one fell swoop, but they didn't expect that the ghost race would be defeated in the end. Who would have thought that the dragon race would come to the aid of the human race? Even more so, who would have thought that Gui Yentian would be defeated by Xiao Chen? And who would have thought that Xiao Chen's strength could grow to such a level? In the central great hall of the ghost race's encampment, Gui Fun and the other great saints of the ghost race sat together with gloomy expressions. Gui Fun first asked about Gui Yentian's situation. "How is Yentian?" "The situation is not good. I'm seriously injured. Fortunately, I used ghost concealment in time to escape. However, it will be difficult for me to recover from my injuries in a short period of time. Moreover, my state of mind seems to have suffered quite a blow." It was reasonable for Gui Yentian to be heavily injured. However, compared to his physical injuries, Gui Yentian's mental injuries were far more severe. In this battle, not only had Xiao Chen defeated Gui Yentian, he had also dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. Hearing this, Guifan said coldly, Yantian will not be defeated by such a small matter. Try your best to treat him. As for the rest, it's up to Yantian himself. Now let's talk about what to do next. Gui Yantian had suffered a heavy blow from Shao Chen. However, Guifan didn't believe that Gui Yantian would fall because of this. Since Gui Yantian could become the first holy son of the ghost race, it would be strange if he was defeated so easily. Since his life wasn't in danger, there was no need to worry. As for the crack in his state of mind, it would be up to Gui Yantian himself. If he couldn't endure it, then Guifan and the others wouldn't be able to do anything. They didn't discuss Gui Yantian anymore. After this battle, Guifan and the others were faced with a very important decision, to fight or not to fight. The ghost race had suffered a crushing defeat in the first battle. Should they continue to fight or negotiate with the human race? However, if they wanted to negotiate, then the ghost race would have to give compensation. Otherwise, if they didn't fight and didn't give any compensation, then the human race would definitely not agree. Hearing Guifan's words, Gui Shuang and the other two's expressions turned solemn. They had never expected this situation. After a moment of silence, Gui Shuang was the first to speak. Let's negotiate. Elder Gui He is still in the hands of the human race. Gui He was the great saint of the ghost race trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation. At the same time, he was also a great elder of the Ghost King Palace. Gui Shuang proposed to negotiate. Hearing this, Guifan and the other two's expressions turned ugly, but they didn't object. If Gui He hadn't fallen into the hands of the human race, then perhaps Guifan and the others would continue to fight. But now Gui He was in the hands of the human race. If they chose to continue fighting, then Gui He would definitely be the first to die. The great sage's importance to the ghost race was self-evident. Thus, even if it was for Gui He's life, Guifan and the others could only choose to stop fighting and negotiate. However, Guifan and the others still felt humiliated to have to negotiate with the human race. After all, the ghost race had always been stronger than the human race. But now they had fallen to the point where they had to take the initiative to negotiate with the human race. They felt aggrieved and unwilling, but what could they do? Unless they could give up on Gui He's life, but that was impossible. Gui He was the great sage, and the ghost race couldn't afford to lose him. After a moment of silence, Guifan said helplessly in the end, "Send someone to see if the human race is willing to negotiate." In the end, they made their choice. Shao Chen didn't know what had happened in the ghost race. At this moment, he returned to Qin Shuru and the others' residence. The night passed silently. The ghost race didn't do anything at all. Early the next morning, the ghost race sent a saint to state that they wanted to negotiate. Yin Yangzi and the others didn't make things difficult for the ghost race saint. After all, he was just a messenger. Killing him wouldn't affect the ghost race at all, so there was no need to make things difficult for him. Moreover, the fact that the ghost race had taken the initiative to negotiate was actually exactly what Yin Yangzi and the others wanted. After all, both the ghost race and the human race wanted to negotiate. The human race's strength had never been at the top amongst the 100 races in the Central World. This time, they'd relied on the dragon race's support to defeat the ghost race. If the two races were to continue fighting like this, then the final outcome would actually be very difficult to predict. Don't think that everything will be fine just because the human race won this battle. After all, a large part of the reason for their victory was the dragon race. Once the battle between the two races became more intense, would the dragon race continue to help the human race? After all, they weren't from the same race, so it was impossible for the dragon race to fight to the death for the human race. Once the dragon race withdrew, would the human race still be a match for the ghost race? After all, the dragon race's strength wasn't the strength of the human race, so relying on external forces wouldn't last long. So, Yin Yangzi and the others actually didn't want to continue fighting the ghost race to the death. begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1490. The Ghost Clan's initiative to propose peace talks was exactly what Inyangzi and the others wanted. Therefore, the three of them did not refuse and quickly agreed on a location for the peace talks with Gui Mu and the others. The location of the peace talks was in the Wanha mountain range, but it was not near the camps of the two sides. This was to prevent the other side from playing any trick. At the same time, during the peace talks, each side could only send the great sage. Other cultivators could not approach. The two sides did not have any objections to this. After all, this was a very normal thing. The peace talks were set for the next day. When Xiao Chun heard the news, he was not too surprised because he had already expected it. Seeing that Xiao Chun did not care about the peace talks, Gu Lingyao unhappily said, "Why don't you care at all?" This time, the Ghost Clan initiated the peace talk. It was Gu Lingyao who brought the news back. Xiao Chun did not know from whom she heard it, but Xiao Chun did not care about this. Hearing this, he smiled slightly. The peace talks are inevitable. The Ghost Clan initiated the peace talks, and the human clan does not want to fight to the death with the Ghost Clan, so there is nothing strange about this. He did not find it strange. Hearing this, Gu Lingyao unhappily snorted and said, "You are so boring. I am ignoring you." When Gu Lingyao brought back this news, she thought that Xiao Chen would be shocked. Who would have thought that Xiao Chen did not take it seriously at all? This made the little girl unhappy. After saying this, Gu Lingyao directly ran to find 100 Flower Fairy. In response, Xiao Chen shook his head with a smile and did not mind. If the two clans agreed to the peace talks, the Ghost Clan would definitely give some compensation. But what would they give? The Heavenly Law Stone? This should not be possible. After all, the Heavenly Law Stone was too precious. Gui Mu and the others would definitely not agree. The Heavenly Law Stone was impossible. It seemed that it would most likely be some cultivation resources. The next morning, Inyangzi and the other two, as well as the great sage of the Dragon Clan, Long Kunyan, headed towards the agreed-upon location. As the great sage, Long Kunyan had indeed helped them greatly this time around. Thus, he naturally had the qualifications to participate in the peace talks this time around. The four great holy emperors left. At the same time, Gui Mu's group of 4 also left the Ghost Race's encampment. Both sides didn't bring anyone else. Of course, these little tricks were meaningless. When facing a quasi-sage, even if one wanted to set up an ambush, it would be impossible to stop the great sage unless there were several hundred quasi-sages and saints. Otherwise, if the great sage wanted to leave, one wouldn't be able to stop him. Those small actions didn't have much meaning, so both sides consciously came to the meeting place according to the agreement. The agreed meeting place was at the tallest mountain peak in the Wanha mountain range. Because it was far from where both sides were stationed, the battle yesterday did not affect this place. They arrived at almost the same time. When Inyangzi's group of 4 appeared on the mountain peak, Gui Mu's group of 4 also appeared. 8 the great sage from both sides had gathered. Gui Mu's group of 4 didn't look too good, but they still maintained their composure and didn't act out. The 8 of them came to the center of the mountain peak, took out a praying mat, and sat down facing each other. Inyangzi sat opposite Gui Mu and looked at Inyangzi. Gui Mu took the initiative to speak first. "Speak. What does the human clan want?" Clearly, Ghost Grave didn't want to talk nonsense with Inyangzi. He didn't even want to waste a second here. Therefore, he went straight to the point and asked what the human race wanted. Since the peace talks were initiated by the Ghost Clan naturally had to compensate the human clan. Besides, not only the human clan but also the Dragon Clan. Of course, the compensation from the Dragon Clan was only incidental. The human clan was still the most important. Upon hearing Gui Mu's words, Inyangzi's expression didn't change much. He said indifferently, "The Heavenly Tao Stone." He knew that the Ghost Clan wouldn't give the Heavenly Tao Stone to him. But since it was a negotiation, there was always room for negotiation. Therefore, the price he offered was naturally high. However, as soon as Yin Yangzi said the words Heavenly Tao Stone, Gui Mu interrupted him before he could finish his sentence. Impossible, Yin Yangzi. Don't push your luck. The Heavenly Tao Stone would never be given to the human clan. Not even a single piece. Yin Yangzi sneered. You don't want to? Then forget it. We'll go back and slay Gui Mu and continue to fight the Ghost Clan. Yin Yangzi threatened. Hearing this, Gui Mu's eyes burned with fury. Threat? He couldn't remember how many years it had been since he was threatened. Gui Mu had never been threatened before. Glaring coldly at Yin Yangzi, Gui Mu gnashed his teeth and said, Yin Yangzi, don't go overboard. The Heavenly Tao Stone is impossible. Say something more practical. The Heavenly Tao Stone was impossible. No matter what, Gui Mu wouldn't use the Heavenly Tao Stone as compensation. Yin Yangzi's eyes glinted with a sneer. He naturally knew that the Heavenly Tao Stone was impossible. The reason why he said that earlier was just to raise the price. Upon hearing Gui Mu's words, Yin Yangzi sneered. Alright, since you put it that way, I'll take a step back. Needless to say, cultivation resources. I don't want to list them out one by one. Anyway, cultivation resources must be compensated. That's fine with you, right? Compensation of cultivation resources. Gui Mu's expression turned for the better. Although he knew that the cultivation resources Yin Yangzi mentioned were definitely not a small number, it was much easier to accept compared to the Heavenly Tao Stone. Moreover, before coming, Gui Mu and the others had already thought it through. The cultivation resources had to be spat out to the human race. Otherwise, the human race wouldn't be able to negotiate with them. Since he was mentally prepared, Gui Mu didn't refute Yin Yangzi's words. Instead, he silently agreed. However, this was only Yin Yangzi's first request. There was a second request, and Gui Mu's face turned gloomy when he heard the second request. Also, other than cultivation resources, your ghost race must provide 2 complete sets of Ghost King bones. Ghost King bones? 2 complete corpses. Ghost Grave's face darkened when he heard this. Although the Ghost King bones weren't as precious as the Heavenly Tao Stone, they were still supreme treasures of the ghost race. Moreover, they were unique to the ghost race. No other race in the Central World had Ghost King bones. He had never imagined that Yin Yangzi would actually want the Ghost King bones, and 2 of them at that. Hearing this, Gui Mu's eyes were already firmly fixed on Yin Yangzi as he shouted furiously. Yin Yangzi, I've said it before. Don't go too far. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1491. The Ghost Grave could provide cultivation resources, even if it was just a bit more. However, Yin Yangzi wanted the Ghost Monarch bones, and 2 complete ones at that. In the entire ghost race, there were only 8 complete Ghost Monarch bones, and Yin Yangzi wanted 2. It was no wonder that the Ghost Grave was so angry. The Ghost Monarch bones were the most precious treasures of the ghost race. Due to the different cultivation methods of the ghost race, when a great saint of the ghost race died, there was a chance that their bones would turn into Ghost Monarch bones. Of course, this was only a chance and not an absolute. This was why there were so few Ghost Monarch bones. The great sage's number was already very low. Moreover, not every great sage of the ghost race could turn into a Ghost Monarch bone after death. Therefore, the Ghost Monarch bones were the rarest treasures to the ghost race. The use of the Ghost Monarch bones was also very simple. It was similar to a secret technique. A cultivator could fuse with the Ghost Monarch bones and explode with a terrifying power for a short period of time. However, at the level of the Great Sage, any secret technique would be useless. This was why the Ghost Monarch bones were so precious. Moreover, it was not only the ghost race. Any other race could fuse with the Ghost Monarch bones, allowing them to explode with power in a short period of time. This was the most precious part of the ghost monarch bones. Otherwise, if only the ghost race could use it, then the ghost monarch bones would be worthless to the other races. At the level of the great sage, the ghost monarch bones were the only treasure in the central world that could increase a cultivator's power. He angrily glared at Enyangzi. Seeing this, Enyangzi did not back down this time and said with a gloomy expression, "Ghost Grave, am I going too far or are you going too far? Let's not talk about the heavenly Tao stone from before, but you still won't give us the ghost monarch bones. What is this? Is there no sincerity? If there is no sincerity, then is there a need to negotiate?" Enyangzi had never thought about obtaining the heavenly Tao stone, but the Ghost King bone was something that Enyangzi was determined to obtain. Furthermore, these two Ghost King bones would not belong to the human race. One of them would be given to the dragon race. This was something that Enyangzi and the others had already discussed with Long Kunyan last night. One of them belonged to the dragon race. Therefore, Long Kunyan spoke up at this moment. "Ghost Grave, forget about the heavenly law stone, but you have to give me the Ghost King bone. Otherwise, my dragon tribe won't mind beating you up. You should know that I'm the only one here, but if the Dragon Emperor comes in the future, 2 Ghost King bones won't be enough." Long Kunyan was also extremely jealous of the Ghost King bone. Thus, he naturally spoke up for Enyangzi. At the same time, Long Kunyan did not hide his ruthless threat towards Gui Mu. Even though it was impossible for the dragon race to send out any more powerful beings to support the human race, the ghost race did not know about this. Therefore, Long Kunyan did not even blush when he said these words. Hearing these words, Gui Mu's face turned extremely ugly. He had to be wary of the dragon race. Furthermore, if the dragon race were to help the human race with all their might, then the ghost race would definitely be hard-pressed to deal with them. After all, there were 3 the great sage beings in the dragon race. In terms of strength, they were not much weaker than this human. To be honest, Gui Mu could not bear to part with the 2 Ghost King bones. However, given the situation before him, he had no way of objecting. Who knew if the dragon race would go all out and fight against the ghost race together with the human race? He turned his gaze towards Gui Shuang and the other 2 beside him. Facing Gui Mu's gaze, the 3 of them were also grim. However, they nodded their heads gently. Their intentions were clear. They agreed to Enyangzi's request. Since Gui Shuang and the other 2 had agreed, Gui Mu had no choice but to agree as well. In this negotiation, Enyangzi had indeed grasped the situation well. He had managed to obtain sufficient benefits without crossing the bottom line of the ghost race. In other words, he had made a huge profit. They agreed to hand over the compensation 3 days later, including the 2 Ghost King bones. Of course, the human race would also have to release the ghost crane that was trapped in the Skylock array. After reaching an agreement, Gui Mu and the other 3 immediately left. When they left, one could tell that the 4 of them were extremely depressed. After successfully settling the matter of the peace talks, Enyangzi and the other 3 heaved a sigh of relief. After returning to the encampment of the human race, the 4 of them waited for 3 days. If the ghost race handed over the compensation, then the human race would release the ghost crane. However, if the ghost race returned, then Enyangzi and the other 3 would kill the ghost crane immediately. The peace talks were very successful. At night, Xiao Chen also received news of the peace talks. However, at this time, Xiao Chen did not care about the results of the peace talks at all. This was because Xiao Chen was currently in a state of excitement. Just a moment ago, a mysterious energy descended from the sky and enveloped him. Then, Xiao Chen felt a message enter his mind. The content of the message was very simple. It was that Xiao Chen had also obtained the approval of the will of the Heavenly Way and was bestowed with the Heavenly Way's protection. Xiao Chen was definitely no stranger to the Heavenly Way's protection. Back at the Human Race Hero Assembly, Long Yang had used the Heavenly Way's protection against Xianyuan Baijian. He knew that Long Yang and the other two had this privilege. They could communicate with the will of the Heavenly Way and receive the Heavenly Way's protection. Once the Heavenly Way's protection was bestowed, the person protected by the Heavenly Way's protection would not be harmed for 3 days. During this time, even the great sage would not be able to do anything. He never thought that he would also receive the Heavenly Way's protection. How could Shao Chun not be excited? This was equivalent to having an extra life. After all, the Heavenly Way's protection was something that even the great sage would not be able to do anything about. In the past, only Long Yang and the other two had received such a reward. Now, Shao Chun had also received the Heavenly Way's protection, becoming the 4th person in the Central World to receive the Heavenly Way's protection. Bestowing the Heavenly Way's protection was the will of the Heavenly Way's recognition of Shao Chun. It felt that Shao Chun was already at the same level as Long Yang and the other two. It gave Shao Chun more protection, hoping that Shao Chun would be able to grow up safely. He was excited. Soon, the mysterious power disappeared. However, Shao Chun had already learned how to use the Heavenly Way's protection and communicate with the will of the Heavenly Way. As long as Shao Chun wanted to, he could communicate with the will of the Heavenly Way at any time and place and have it bestow the Heavenly Way's protection. Moreover, the Heavenly Way's protection could not only be used on himself, but also on others. It was just like how Long Yang had used his Heavenly Way's protection on Shao Chun during the Human Race Hero Assembly. It was definitely the strongest life-saving trump card. Shao Chun never thought that there would be such a pleasant surprise. He was overjoyed. In this way, whether it was himself or the people around him, they would be safer. It was indeed something to be happy about. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommend it. Chapter 1492. Shao Chun did not expect himself to be protected by the heavenly law. He was elated for a long time. After a night of silence, 3 days later, the Ghost Clan delivered the compensation they had agreed on. At the same time, they withdrew from the Myriad Harmony mountain range. As for Yin Yangzi and the others, they released the Ghost Crane as promised. The war between the two clans ended just like that. Many people did not expect the Ghost Clan to invade the Human Clan with such great fanfare to snatch the Heavenly Law Stone from the Human Clan. However, the Ghost Clan was the first to ask for peace and paid a hefty price for it. The Ghost Clan naturally hated the Human Clan even more. However, what could they do? They had already lost and the morale of the Ghost Clan was low. On the other hand, the Human Clan had the help of the Dragon Clan. For the time being, the Ghost Clan would not attack the Human Clan. The war ended temporarily and the Ghost Clan retreated. The cultivators of the Human Clan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, Yin Yangzi and the other two gave the Ghost Clan some of the compensation to the Dragon Clan. Although the Dragon Clan did not ask for any compensation, they had already helped them. Now that they had won, it would be unreasonable if they did not express their gratitude. Long Kunyan did not reject Yin Yangzi and the other two's actions. He accepted it calmly. After all, the Dragon Clan had also suffered losses in this war. It was reasonable for them to take some compensation. That day, Long Kunyan led the experts of the Dragon Clan and left. The Human Clan also began to withdraw from the Wanha mountain range. Of course, they left some people behind to guard against the Ghost Clan. After returning to Clear Sky City, no one dared to slander Shao Chun after this battle. The news of Shao Chun defeating the Ghost Clan's #1 holy son, Gui Yentian, had already spread. Everyone knew that the previous rumors were complete nonsense. Shao Chun was not afraid of the Ghost Clan's #1 holy son, Gui Yentian. After returning to Clear Sky City, Shao Xing and the others were still recuperating. Shao Chun was the same as before. He was immersed in cultivation every day. When he was free, he would accompany Qin Shuru and the other two ladies. Days passed. After the ghost race retreated, no other race came to attack the human race. After all, now that the 100-race war had begun, the conflicts between the major races had yet to completely erupt. For example, the celestial race, the god race, the demon race, and so on, their current targets were the weakest races. He would first obtain the heavenly Tao stones from the weaker races before dealing with the stronger races. The god race, the devil race, and the celestial race were all like this. And after several days of recuperation, Yin Yangzi and the other two gathered together. They also had the same plan. In the vicinity of the human territory there were also some weaker races. These weaker races were completely incomparable to the human race in terms of strength. Perhaps there wasn't even a single the great sage in their race. These races were very weak, so their territories were naturally not big. However, there were still 1 or 2 heavenly Tao stones that fell into their territories. At this time, Yin Yangzi and the other two gathered together. Their target was a small race called the night race in the vicinity of the human territory. The night race was located in the southwest of the human territory. They were very weak and did not have many people. Their territory was pitifully small, not even a quarter of the size of the human race. Moreover, the strongest person in the race was only a half-step great sage. This kind of strength was naturally not worth mentioning to the human race. Therefore, Yin Yangzi and the other two set their sights on the night race. According to their estimation, the night race should have 2 heavenly Tao stones in their hands. These were the ones that had fallen into the night race's territory. Although 2 heavenly Tao stones were not much, they were definitely very precious. Naturally, the night race was not qualified to possess such precious treasures. Weakness was the original sin. Many things in this world were still like this. If you were not strong enough, then you were not qualified to possess many things. In the main palace of Haotian City, Yin Yangzi and the other two discussed for a while. They immediately decided to make a trip to the night race and ask for the 2 heavenly Tao stones. With the strength of the night race, they did not have any power to resist in front of the human race. Therefore, the night race should not refuse. There were no objections to this. At this time, Xing Zhantian looked at Yin Yangzi and Xianyuan Wudi and said, "Then, which of the 3 of us will go?" "I'll go." Hearing this, Yin Yangzi said lightly, "Only one the great sage was needed to go." It was enough to make the entire night race unable to muster the slightest power to resist. Hearing Yin Yangzi's words, Xing Zhantian nodded and said, "All right, then, it's decided." Yin Yangzi and the other two set their sights on the night race. This kind of thing happened everywhere in the central world. Those weak races were naturally the first target. Because they were weak, they were not qualified to possess the heavenly Tao stones. Therefore, it was better to give it to those strong races. Small races like the night race were the first targets to be eliminated during the War of the 100 Races. The heavenly Tao stones in their hands would be taken away before they could even warm them up. Early the next morning, Yin Yangzi directly rushed to the night race. He did not bring many people, only 2 half-step great sages. In addition to Yin Yangzi, the 3 of them rushed to the night race. It was just 3 people, but this was enough to suppress the night race. This was because the strongest cultivator in the night race was only a half-step great sage, and there was only one of them. Yin Yangzi's departure did not attract too much attention. On the day after Yin Yangzi left, Xiao Chen, who was cultivating in the courtyard, also received news about Chun Ling. The news was obtained by the sacred palace. All along, Xiao Chen had been paying attention to news about Chun Ling, but there was no result. Today, Chun Yu personally came to Xiao Chen and said that someone saw Chun Ling appear in the Xianyuan clan. Chun Ling went to the Xianyuan clan? Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback when he heard Chun Yu's words. He did not know why Chun Ling went to the Xianyuan clan. Looking at Chun Yu, Xiao Chen asked, "Do you know why my big brother went to the Xianyuan clan?" Chun Yu shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Chun Ling actually went to the Xianyuan clan. Knowing the matter between Chun Ling and the Xianyuan clan, Xiao Chen did not think that Chen Ling went to the Xianyuan clan to acknowledge his ancestors. Xiao Chen felt a little uneasy. Originally, he planned to rush to the Xianyuan clan himself, but on second thought, it was definitely not possible for him to go alone. Because he killed Xianyuan Baijian, the relationship between Xiao Chen and the Xianyuan clan could be said to be very tense. Although Xianyuan Wudi did not take revenge on him because of the Hundred Race War, this was only because of the Hundred Race War. Xianyuan Wudi might be able to maintain restraint in Haotian City, but if Xiao Chen went to the Xianyuan clan, wouldn't that be challenging the Xianyuan clan's bottom line? Moreover, he still did not know why Chen Ling went to the Xianyuan clan. If Xiao Chen rashly went to the Xianyuan clan at this time, perhaps not only would he not be able to help Chen Ling, but he would also very likely bring trouble to him. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 1493. Xiao Chen did not dare to act rashly because he did not know why Chen Ling had gone to the Xianyuan clan. After all, in his current situation, if he rashly went to the Xianyuan clan, he would probably cause trouble for Chen Ling. After a moment of silence, Xiao Chen said to Qin Yu, "Pay attention to my big brother's movements. Let me know if anything happens." He did not intend to act rashly for the time being. He wanted to see what Chen Ling was going to do in the Xianyuan clan. By the time Xiao Chen received the news about Chen Ling had already snuck into the Xianyuan clan. The Xianyuan clan was a great saint clan that had been passed down since ancient times. It was located at the foot of Xiushan. There was a huge manor here, and this manor was where the Xianyuan clan resided. Due to the start of the Hundred Clan War, the experts of the various major forces of the human clan had actually gathered in Clear Sky City. Therefore, there were no experts in the Xianyuan clan, and only 2 saints were left to guard it. With 2 saints, the defense force was obviously very weak. Chen Ling had been alone for the past few years. Although no one knew where he had gone, Chen Ling's cultivation had also reached the limit of the Saint Mastery realm. He was only a step away from breaking through to the Saint Perfection realm. With such cultivation and Chen Ling's own combat strength, it was not difficult for him to sneak into the Xianyuan clan, which currently had no experts guarding it. The entire Xianyuan clan's manor occupied a huge area, just like a city. Moreover, in the manor, in addition to the Xianyuan clan's direct descendants and collateral disciples, there were many guards, maids, and servants. Under the cover of the night, Chen Ling quietly sneaked into the Xianyuan clan's manor. The 2 Xianyuan clan saints who stayed behind to guard the manor did not notice anything amiss. After easily killing a guard, Chen Ling put on his clothes. After a simple disguise, he headed towards the depths of the manor. Chen Ling was both familiar and unfamiliar with the Xianyuan clan's manor. After all, he had not stepped into this place for many years. There were many new buildings, but there were still many old traces that Chen Ling was familiar with. A complicated expression flashed through Chen Ling's eyes as he walked through the manor of the Xianyuan clan. Although Chen Ling had almost completely fallen out with the Xianyuan clan because of Xianyuan Wudi, he was still a member of the Xianyuan clan, no matter what. Moreover, Chen Ling used to be an existence that stood above everyone else. He was one of the 3 elders of the Xianyuan clan, and his status was second only to the patriarch. He had originally thought that he would never be able to set foot in the Xianyuan clan again, but in the end, Chen Ling had still come here. Of course, Chen Ling had not come here to reminisce. Chen Ling walked towards the depths of the manor according to his memories. Chen Ling's goal was Xianyuan Wudi's residence. The reason why he wanted to go there was because of Chen Ling's experience outside. Before Xiao Chen, Chen Ling had left the Heavenly Yin Sun sect without telling anyone where he lived. In fact, Chen Ling had gone to an ancient relic of the Xianyuan clan. Only Chen Ling knew about this ancient relic. Even Xianyuan Wudi did not know about it. It was the previous patriarch, Xianyuan Songtao, who told Chun Ling. As a person who had been reborn, Chun Ling's cultivation was almost inseparable from that of the Xianyuan clan. Therefore, if he wanted to break through quickly, the best place for him to go was naturally that ancient relic. After so many years, that ancient relic had indeed not been discovered by anyone. Even Xianyuan Wudi did not know about its existence. In this ancient relic, Chun Ling had obtained great benefit. His cultivation had also directly broken through to the limit of the Sage Realm Great Completion. However, it was also here that Chun Ling learned a shocking secret about Xianyuan Wudi. Back then, Xia Qingqing's death was entirely because of Xianyuan Wudi. In order to save Xia Qingqing, Chun Ling had gone to the Dragon Clan alone. However, in the end, he was still unable to save Xia Qingqing's life. Chun Ling himself had died and was fortunately reborn in the Tianqian continent. Xianyuan Wudi had launched a sneak attack on Xia Qingqing and Chun Ling because of a treasure in an ancient relic. That treasure could help Xianyuan Wudi break through to the Great Saint Realm. Chun Ling had told this to Shaoqun. However, as for what happened after Chun Ling's death and rebirth, even Chun Ling himself did not know about it. This time, in that ancient relic, Chun Ling knew everything. It turned out that after Xianyuan Wudi had assassinated Chun Ling and Xia Qingqing, he had returned to the Xianyuan clan alone and announced to the public that Chun Ling and Xia Qingqing had died. As for what happened to Chun Ling back then, the Xianyuan clan had also investigated. However, the Dragon Clan had indeed attacked and killed Chun Ling. The Xianyuan clan had nothing to say about this and did not dare to ask the Dragon Clan for an explanation. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi had not yet become the head of the Xianyuan clan. At that time, the head of the Xianyuan clan was called Xianyuan Songtao. It could be said that he was the uncle of Chun Ling and Xianyuan Wudi. He was a figure of the same generation as their father. At that time, Xianyuan Songtao was the head of the Xianyuan clan. After Chun Ling's death and rebirth, in just a few short decades, Xianyuan Wudi had successfully taken a step forward and broken through to the Great Saint Realm. At that time, following Xianyuan Wudi's breakthrough, the Xianyuan clan suddenly had one more the Great Sage. This caused the strength of the entire Xianyuan clan to skyrocket. It could almost be said to be the greatest power of the human clan. After all, the Yin-Yang sect and the Haotian alliance only had one the Great Sage in each sect. At that time, the Xianyuan clan had two the Great Sage, Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Wudi. Originally, they thought that with Xianyuan Wudi's breakthrough, the Xianyuan clan would begin to rise. However, no one expected that just a few months later, Xianyuan Songtao would mysteriously disappear. There were rumors that Xianyuan Songtao had gone to the territory of the Ghost Clan and was killed by the Ghost Clan's great sage. However, this was only a rumor. No one had seen it with their own eyes. Since Xianyuan Songtao had mysteriously disappeared, as the great sage of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Wudi naturally became the new head of the Xianyuan clan. Originally, there was nothing too strange about this matter. Chun Ling did not care about it. However, this time, in the ancient ruins, Chun Ling saw a technique relaying jade that Xianyuan Songtao had left behind. However, what was recorded in this technique relaying jade was not a cultivation method. It was something that had happened in the past. In fact, Xianyuan Songtao had never been to the Ghost Clan. He was not killed by any Ghost Clan's great sage. In fact, he was secretly killed by Xianyuan Wudi. It was completely unexpected that Xianyuan Wudi would actually secretly kill Xianyuan Songtao. After all, Xianyuan Songtao was almost equivalent to Chun Ling and Xianyuan Wudi's father. Since young, Xianyuan Songtao had raised Chun Ling and Xianyuan Wudi. He was the one who had taught them how to cultivate. However, Xianyuan Wudi had actually harmed him. Please collect, monthly vote recommend. Chapter 1494. After Xianyuan Wudi broke through to the Great Sage realm, he began to have evil intentions towards the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. However, this momentum was expected. Anyway, Chen Ling knew very well that Xianyuan Wudi had always been a very ambitious person. Moreover, he would do anything to achieve his goals. Before his cultivation had broken through to the Great Saint realm, Xianyuan Wudi might have been able to restrain the evil thoughts in his heart, but after his cultivation had broken through and he had become a great saint emperor, he naturally couldn't restrain the evil thoughts in his heart. They were both the great sage. Why couldn't Xianyuan Wudi become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan? Therefore, after Xianyuan Wudi broke through to the great saint realm, he began to think of ways to seize the position of patriarch. If he wanted to succeed, he first had to get rid of Xianyuan Songtao. If Xianyuan Songtao didn't die, Xianyuan Wudi would never be able to become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. Thinking of this, Xianyuan Wudi also began to plan. After spending a lot of effort, Xianyuan Wudi found a stalk of nirvana grass. The nirvana grass was a peak saint realm spiritual herb. It had no use, but it was extremely poisonous. Even the great sage would find it difficult to resist. With the nirvana grass, Xianyuan Wudi extracted the poison from it and found an opportunity to feed it to Xianyuan Songtao. After consuming the nirvana grass, Xianyuan Songtao's combat strength was immediately reduced. He could only use less than 10% of his combat strength. Under such circumstances, Xianyuan Wudi naturally chose to attack without mercy. He was prepared to kill Xianyuan Songtao in one fell swoop. Although Xianyuan Wudi trusted Xianyuan Songtao very much, Xianyuan Songtao was not on guard at all. However, when he discovered that he was poisoned, it was already too late. With the poison in his body, he was naturally no match for Xianyuan Wudi. However, Xianyuan Wudi did not expect Xianyuan Songtao to suddenly take out an ice coffin at the moment of his death. Then, his entire body lay in the ice coffin. Moreover, at the last moment, Xianyuan Songtao used the last of his strength to send the key to the ice coffin and the jade that recorded the truth to the ancient ruins that only he and Chen Ling knew about. It was because of this that Chen Ling knew what had happened back then and obtained the key to the ice coffin. Xianyuan Songtao didn't die. Because of the ice coffin, Xianyuan Wudi couldn't do anything to Xianyuan Songtao. It was unknown where Xianyuan Songtao had obtained this ice coffin. Even the great sage could not break it. Over the years, Xianyuan Wudi had tried countless methods to break it, but to no avail. It was useless against the ice coffin. After countless attempts, Xianyuan Wudi finally came to a conclusion. Unless he had the key, it was impossible to open the hotel. Unable to kill Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi also tried to find the whereabouts of the key. However, the central world was a big shot. Who knew where Xianyuan Songtao had hidden the key? After a fruitless search, Xianyuan Wudi could only hide Xianyuan Songtao, who had fallen into a state of suspended animation, and the ice coffin. He then announced that Xianyuan Songtao was dead, and in the end, he became the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. If Chen Ling hadn't gone to the ancient ruins, no one would have known about this. Xianyuan Songtao would probably have slept in the ice coffin forever. Chen Ling was very close to Xianyuan Songtao. The two of them were like father and son. As a result, Chen Ling did not hesitate at all after learning about this. He hurried to the Xianyuan clan as soon as possible and prepared to save Xianyuan Songtao. He followed his memory all the way to the depths of the Xianyuan clan's manor. Along the way, Chen Ling captured a guard and asked about Xianyuan Wudi's residence. He was not discovered along the way. Of course, this was also because there were no experts in the Xianyuan clan right now. Otherwise, Chen Ling would not have been able to sneak into the manor under normal circumstances. Soon, he arrived at Xianyuan Wudi's residence and directly leapt in. Because Xianyuan Wudi was not in the Xianyuan clan right now, he was in the Haotian alliance, so there was naturally no one in his residence. As for the servants and maids, they were not a problem for Chen Ling at all. He easily dealt with them. Without drawing anyone's attention, Chen Ling killed all the guards and maids in the Xianyuan clan's cave. He ignored the corpses on the ground and began to search for Xianyuan Songtao's whereabouts. Since Xianyuan Wudi had secretly killed Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi definitely could not let others know about this, including the people of the Xianyuan clan. After all, Xianyuan Songtao's prestige in the Xianyuan clan was extremely high. If the clansmen of the Xianyuan clan found out that Xianyuan Songtao had been killed by Xianyuan Wudi, then there would probably be many who refused to accept Xianyuan Wudi as the patriarch. So, this matter could only be kept a secret to Xianyuan Wudi. Since it was like that, it was absolutely impossible for Xianyuan Wudi to imprison Xianyuan Songtao in the Xianyuan clan's dungeon. In this way, Xianyuan Wudi's abode was naturally the best place. After all, as the patriarch of the clan, not just anyone could enter Xianyuan Wudi's abode. It was even to the extent that without Xianyuan Wudi's orders, even the 3 elders couldn't enter Xianyuan Wudi's abode at will. In this way, this was clearly the best place to hide Xianyuan Songtao. Chen Ling searched all along the way, but he didn't notice Xianyuan Songtao's whereabouts even after he searched the entire abode. He arrived at the main courtyard and frowned slightly. Could it be that he isn't here? Could it be that Xianyuan Songtao isn't here? But if he isn't here, then where could he be? As he thought, Chen Ling didn't give up and started searching once more. This time, Chen Ling practically searched every nook and cranny of the entire abode. In the end, Chen Ling found a very obscure palm-sized talisman formation at the rockery in the back garden. Moreover, there was a talisman formation inscribed on it. Obviously, this talisman formation didn't have any use, and it seemed like it was just a switch. Chen Ling didn't think too much about it and directly placed his hand on the talisman formation before injecting his spirit energy into it. Sure enough, the talisman formation activated, and the rockery slowly opened up, and then a passageway that led underground appeared before Chen Ling. Chen Ling's intuition told him that such a secretive passageway was definitely the place where Xianyuan Wudi was hiding Xianyuan Songtao. He immediately walked down the passageway with quick step. At the same time that Chen Ling discovered the passageway, Xianyuan Wudi, who was countless thousands of kilometers away, suddenly opened his eyes while cultivating with his eyes closed, and a wisp of coldness flashed through his eyes as he said, "Who is it? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1495. Xianyuan Wudi immediately sensed that Chen Ling had triggered the talisman formation. Xianyuan Songtao's matter was definitely Xianyuan Wudi's weakness. Therefore, it could be said that he had spent a lot of effort on Xianyuan Songtao. Not only did he build a secret room under the rockery, but he also used a talisman array as a switch. At the same time, Xianyuan Wudi also connected the talisman array with a law. As long as someone triggered the talisman array, no matter how far away they were, Xianyuan Wudi would be able to sense it immediately. He was in Haotian City, but the talisman array was punished. Xianyuan Wudi did not hesitate at all. He moved and immediately disappeared from the room, rushing in the direction of the transmission array in Haotian City. If it was something else, Xianyuan Wudi would not be so nervous. However, since it was related to Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi could not ignore it. He immediately rushed towards the teleportation formation of Haotian City. At the same time, Chen Ling quickly arrived at the secret room under the rockery. Sure enough, the secret chamber wasn't very big, and there was nothing inside except for an ice coffin. Upon seeing the ice coffin, Chen Ling took a few steps forward and arrived in front of it. Through the ice coffin, he could see that there was indeed an old man sleeping within. To Chen Ling, this old man was extremely familiar. It was Xianyuan Songtao. Chen Ling's eyes turned red. He looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who had been sleeping quietly in the ice coffin for many years. He choked and said, "Uncle, I'm late." He did not expect that Xianyuan Wudi, this bastard, would even lay his hands on Xianyuan Songtao. He was worse than a beast. Because of the ice coffin, he could not sense Xianyuan Songtao's aura at all. However, Chunling was sure that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. He had just fallen into a state of suspended animation. He originally planned to open the ice coffin here, but he did not know how long it would take. Moreover, Chunling also suspected that Xianyuan Wudi might have some other tricks up his sleeve. After all, Xianyuan Songtao's matter was too important to Xianyuan Wudi. He definitely couldn't expose it. Based on Chunling's understanding of Xianyuan Wudi, this person was very cautious. Therefore, he was afraid that Xianyuan Wudi would leave some backup plans. This was not a place to stay for long. With Chunling's current strength, he was no match for Xianyuan Wudi. When he thought of this, Chunling did not hesitate. He immediately carried Guesthouse and flew out of the secret room. The weight of the ice coffin was nothing to Chunling. There was almost no pressure at all. Of course, Chunling had also tried to store the ice coffin in his storage ring, but he did not succeed. Perhaps it was because of Xianyuan Songtao. After all, storage rings could only store inanimate objects, not living things. In fact, it was precisely because the ice coffin could not be stored in a storage ring. Otherwise, Xianyuan Wudi would have carried it with him. After all, it was definitely the safest to keep it with him. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that. Moreover, Xianyuan Wudi couldn't carry an ice coffin everywhere he went. Moreover, once the ice coffin appeared, Xianyuan Songtao's matter would be exposed. Carrying the ice coffin, Chunling instantly charged out of Xianyuan Wudi's cave dwelling. Along the way, whenever he encountered a guard from the Xianyuan clan, Chunling would immediately attack, not giving them the slightest chance to react. With the start of the 100-clan war, the experts of the Xianyuan clan had all gone to clear Sky City. At this moment, the guards who were still in the Xianyuan clan's manor were all below the Dao King realm. Those who were not even at the Dao King realm were naturally vulnerable in front of Chunling. There was no longer any need to hide his whereabouts. Chunling killed his way out of the Xianyuan clan's manor at the fastest speed and then charged into the darkness together. Just as Chunling charged out of the Xianyuan clan's manor, Xianyuan Wudi strode out of the Xianyuan clan's teleportation array. Without any hesitation, he immediately charged towards his own manor. Almost in the blink of an eye, Xianyuan Wudi appeared in the secret room under the rockery. However, at this moment the secret room was already empty. The ice coffin that was placed in the middle of the secret room had also disappeared. Looking at the disappearing ice coffin, Xianyuan Wudi's expression was extremely unsightly. It was even more unsightly than when Xiao Chun killed Xianyuan Baijian. Actually, this was normal. Xianyuan Wudi could tolerate Xiao Chun killing Xianyuan Baijian for the sake of the bigger picture. However, when it came to Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi could not tolerate it at all. Because once Xianyuan Songtao's matter was exposed, Xianyuan Wudi's reputation would be ruined. At that time, not only would the other sects look down on him, but even many people in the Xianyuan clan would want to avenge Xianyuan Songtao. Of course, the most important problem was that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. If Xianyuan Songtao woke up, Xianyuan Wudi dared not imagine what would happen to him. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would probably turn from the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan into a stray dog. The entire Xianyuan clan would probably hunt him down. Xianyuan Songtao's matter could not be exposed. This was the only thought in Xianyuan Wudi's mind. His eyes were overflowing with coldness. Xianyuan Wudi said coldly, "No matter who you are, I will definitely tear you into pieces." With that, Xianyuan Wudi's figure disappeared from where he was and appeared in the sky above the manor. He did not dare to reveal the slightest bit of his aura. Because of this matter, Xianyuan Wudi could not use the power of the Xianyuan clan. Otherwise, if Chun Ling was found by the people of the Xianyuan clan, wouldn't the hotel be seen by others? At that time, Xianyuan Songtao's matter would be exposed. Therefore, Xianyuan Wudi could only do it himself without alerting anyone. Xianyuan Wudi sensed Chun Ling's aura. Because Chun Ling had only left not long ago, and as a great saint emperor, Xianyuan Wudi was extremely sensitive to auras, so Xianyuan Wudi quickly determined the direction Chun Ling had fled in. The killing intent in his eyes had already reached its peak. Xianyuan Wudi snorted coldly. You can't escape. Xianyuan Wudi had already chased after Chun Ling. At the same time, Shao Chen was in the Haotian alliance. It was already late at night, but Chen Yu suddenly came to visit. During the day, Chen Yu had just told Shao Chen about Chun Ling's whereabouts, and in the middle of the night, he came in a hurry. Seeing Chen Yu, Shao Chen also guessed something and asked worriedly, "What's wrong? Did something happen to my big brother?" "It should be, but I don't know for now. I only know that Chun Ling sneaked into the manor of the Xianyuan clan. Then, just now, Xianyuan Wudi suddenly returned to the Xianyuan clan. I think that Xianyuan Wudi's sudden return to the Xianyuan clan has something to do with Chun Ling." Chen Yu naturally did not know about Xianyuan Songtao's matter, but Xianyuan Wudi's abnormal behavior made Chen Yu guess a little. He felt that this matter should have something to do with Chun Ling, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1496. Xianyuan Wudi had suddenly returned to the Xianyuan clan. Shao Chen's face darkened when he heard Chen Yu's words. At the same time, he agreed with Chen Yu's guess. After all, Chun Ling had just snuck into the Xianyuan clan and Xianyuan Wudi had rushed back in the middle of the night. There had to be something going on. Although Shao Chen didn't know what had happened, if Xianyuan Wudi had really rushed back because of Chun Ling, then Chun Ling would be in danger. Even though Chun Ling had been reborn, he was definitely no match for Xianyuan Wudi now. Shao Chen frowned and immediately said, "I'll go find alliance leader Xing Zhantian now." Yangzi wasn't in the human clan, and now the only person who could stop Xianyuan Wudi was Xing Zhantian. Therefore, Shao Chen's first reaction was to go find Xing Zhantian. Naturally, he didn't think that he could stop Xianyuan Wudi by himself. Although Shao Chen was now the fourth holy son on the saint rankings, he was still a far cry from the great sage. Without any hesitation, Shao Chen went straight to Xing Zhantian's residence. On the other side, in Xiushan where the Xianyuan clan resided, Chun Ling was carrying an ice coffin and quickly traversing through the void. For some reason, Chun Ling had a bad premonition. Therefore, Chun Ling wanted to leave the Xianyuan clan as soon as possible and find a safe place to open the ice coffin. However, although Chun Ling's speed was fast enough, compared to Xianyuan Wudi who had the cultivation of a great sage, he was still a little slower. Less than an hour after escaping from the Xianyuan clan, Chun Ling, who was still hurrying through the void, suddenly saw a figure in the darkness in front of him. This figure was none other than Xianyuan Wudi who had chased after Chun Ling's aura. He didn't stop along the way and finally caught up to Chun Ling after an hour. Looking at Chun Ling, Xianyuan Wudi's eyes flashed with surprise. He never thought that the person who took the ice coffin would be so young. Moreover, Xianyuan Wudi had seen Chun Ling when he was in the Taiyang sect. He seemed to be Shao Chen's elder brother. A hint of doubt flashed across his eyes, but very quickly, Xianyuan Wudi's gaze locked onto the ice coffin behind Chun Ling. Looking at the ice coffin, Xianyuan Wudi's face instantly turned cold. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Little thief, do you know that it's not good to steal from others? Especially when it's from my Xianyuan clan." Xianyuan Wudi was determined to kill Chun Ling. No matter what, no matter who Chun Ling was, Xianyuan Wudi would not let him go. The reason was simple: Chun Ling had seen the ice coffin. Originally, Xianyuan Wudi thought that Xianyuan Songtao's matter had been discovered. However, after seeing Chun Ling, Xianyuan Wudi thought that Chun Ling had snuck into the Xianyuan clan to steal the treasure. In the end, he had found the ice coffin by accident. Perhaps he had seen that the ice coffin was extraordinary, so he had decided to steal it. With Chun Ling's age, it was impossible for him to know about Xianyuan Songtao's matter. This was because when Chun Ling was born, Xianyuan Songtao had already been dead for who knew how many years. Moreover, as time passed, very few people in the younger generation would have heard of Xianyuan Songtao's name. He did not think that Chun Ling already knew about Xianyuan Songtao's matter. However, no matter what, since Chun Ling had seen the ice coffin, he deserved to die. There was no other reason. The killing intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. As soon as he finished speaking, Xianyuan Wudi immediately prepared to attack. He did not want to give Chun Ling any chance. Moreover, with Xianyuan Wudi's strength, killing Chun Ling would be an easy task. He immediately prepared to attack. However, at this moment, Chun Ling's words made Xianyuan Wudi's actions abruptly stop. Xianyuan Wudi, you're really heartless. You actually dare to attack your own elder. Thinking back, if it wasn't for Xianyuan Songtao, how could you have stepped onto the path of martial arts? How could you have reached such heights today? After being caught by Xianyuan Wudi, Chun Ling's heart was already in despair. He did not expect Xianyuan Wudi to discover him so quickly. He was simply no match for Xianyuan Wudi. In fact, Chun Ling did not even have the chance to escape from Xianyuan Wudi's hands. The difference in cultivation between the two was simply too great. There was no comparison at all. He already thought that he was going to die. Therefore, before he died, Chun Ling was not afraid of exposing anything. He did not even care about his own identity. His eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at Xianyuan Wudi. When he heard Chun Ling's words, Xianyuan Wudi's actions paused. Then, a cold light flashed in his eyes as he shouted in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Previously, he thought that Chun Ling did not know about Xianyuan Songtao's matter. After all, Chun Ling was simply too young. However, when he heard Chun Ling's words, Xianyuan Wudi knew that this kid in front of him clearly knew what happened back then. His theft of the ice coffin was probably not unintentional. It could be said that Chun Ling's goal was very clear. That was to steal the ice coffin and save Xianyuan Songtao. This kid knew about what happened back then. However, how did he know? One should know that back then, not to mention Chun Ling, even his ancestors were not even born yet. Xianyuan Wudi stared at Chun Ling and asked coldly. Previously, Xianyuan Wudi did not pay much attention to Chun Ling. However, after hearing Chun Ling's words, Xianyuan Wudi began to seriously size Chun Ling up. Strange, it was really strange. It was fine that he did not notice it earlier. However, at this moment, as Xianyuan Wudi seriously sized Chun Ling up, he realized that he actually had a very familiar feeling towards Chun Ling. It was as if he was a friend that he had known for many years. Faced with Xianyuan Wudi's doubts and sizing up, Chun Ling completely threw caution to the wind. His cold eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent as he looked at Xianyuan Wudi and said coldly, "Back then, you ambushed Qingqing and obtained the heaven-defying inheritance in the ruins. From there, you stepped into the Great Saint realm. However, I did not expect that you would actually be able to kill Uncle in the end. Xianyuan Wudi, do you really not recognize me?" He directly told Xianyuan Wudi about what had happened back then. Hearing this, Xianyuan Wudi was stunned. Immediately after, his expression greatly changed as he looked at Chun Ling. You're Xianyuan Ling. You're not dead?" After finally recognizing Chun Ling's identity, the shock in Xianyuan Wudi's heart could not be any greater. How was this possible? A person who had been dead for so many years actually appeared in front of him again and recognized Chun Ling's identity. At the same time, Xianyuan Wudi also discovered that Chun Ling's appearance was exactly the same as Xianyuan Ling's when he was young. The face that was deep in Xianyuan Wudi's memory had once again appeared in front of Xianyuan Wudi at this moment. Request collection, request monthly votes, request recommendation. Chapter 1497. Chunling's words immediately made Xianyuan Wudi recognize his identity. Chunling was really Xianyuan Ling back then. He could also be said to be Xianyuan Wudi's best friend. Back then, Xianyuan Wudi had not yet broken through to the Great Sage realm. Like Xianyuan Ling, he was one of the 3 clan elders of the Xianyuan clan. At that time, the head of the Xianyuan clan was still Xianyuan Songtao. Xianyuan Wudi and Xianyuan Ling were the juniors cultivated by Xianyuan Songtao. They could be said to be the most prominent figures in the Xianyuan clan. As the 3 clan elders, they had a good relationship. Xianyuan Wudi and Chunling would often train together at that time. Xianyuan Wudi thought that the two would be brothers for life, but unfortunately, everything changed because of that incident. Under the temptation of the treasure, Xianyuan Wudi killed Chunling and killed Xia Qingqing. Chunling's eyes were full of undisguised hatred. He looked at Xianyuan Wudi coldly and said in a cold voice, "Why? Do you remember now? How is it possible? Haven't you been by the Dragon Emperor?" Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chunling in shock and stuttered. This matter had always been buried deep in Xianyuan Wudi's heart. He thought that the matter was over, but who would have thought that Chunling was standing in front of him again at this time? Perhaps it was because Chunling held a great weight in Xianyuan Wudi's heart, or perhaps it was because Chunling once gave Xianyuan Wudi too much pressure. Therefore, even though Chunling was now reborn and his cultivation was only at the Great Sage Great Mastery, Xianyuan Wudi still couldn't control his emotions when he knew about Chunling. All those years ago, Chunling surpassed Xianyuan Wudi in practically everything. Be it cultivation, combat strength, or natural talent, Chunling was always superior to Xianyuan Wudi. It was exactly because of this that Chunling was the #1 genius in the Xianyuan clan, whereas Xianyuan Wudi could only settle for the second position. Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chunling in shock and said. Hearing this, Chunling sneered and said, "Surprised? That's right, I was indeed killed by the Dragon Emperor back then. However, fate plays tricks on people. I was reborn in the North Star realm. Rebirth, retaining the memories of the previous life." Hearing this, Xianyuan Wudi was stunned. Although this sounded ridiculous at Xianyuan Wudi's level, he knew that it was not impossible. Of course, rebirth was not something that could be forced. It could only be left to fate. He never thought that Chunling would have such a fortuitous encounter. But very quickly, Xianyuan Wudi came back to his senses, and the shock and fear in his eyes quickly disappeared. What replaced it was madness, savagery, and dense hatred. Xianyuan Wudi roared angrily as he looked at Chunling with bloodshot eyes. "Back then, I ambushed Qingqing. Xianyuan Ling, do you still remember which one of us wanted to know Qingqing? Since we were young, you have always been better than me in everything. Cultivation, combat strength, talent, and even the love of my uncle. You are better than me in everything. It seems that there is only a slight difference, but in front of you, I am always like a shadow. Do you know that since we were young, the first person that people think of when they talk about the Xianyuan clan is Xianyuan Ling? But what about me, Xianyuan Wudi? Just like your shadow, I can only hide in a dark corner forever. As for you, it's like you're giving alms, giving me some of your glory as if I'm a beggar. Everyone thinks that you are good to me like a brother. However, who knows that not only did you steal everything from me, you even stole Qingqing in the end. Xianyuan Ling, I hate you. I have hated you since the beginning. I hate that the Xianyuan clan has me, Xianyuan Wudi, and you, Xianyuan Ling." Xianyuan Wudi roared angrily. As the great sage, no one had ever seen Xianyuan Wudi lose his composure like this. Seeing Chunling, Xianyuan Wudi recalled the past. At this moment, He could no longer control his emotions. Xianyuan Wudi wasn't lying. Chunling had been suppressing Xianyuan Wudi in every aspect since they were young. Of course, this wasn't Chunling's intention. On the contrary, Chunling had been taking care of Xianyuan Wudi. However, this care did not move Xianyuan Wudi. It even made him angry because he felt that Chunling was just giving him charity. The thing that Xianyuan Wudi could not accept the most was Xia Qingqing. Back then, Xia Qingqing was one of the 3 great elders of the Haotian Alliance. Xianyuan Wudi met Xia Qingqing when he went to the Haotian Alliance. At first sight, Xianyuan Wudi fell in love with Xia Qingqing and took the initiative to get close to her. However, who would have thought that after the 3 of them became familiar with each other, Xia Qingqing would choose Chunling and not Xianyuan Wudi. He was the one who met Xia Qingqing first. However, Chunling interfered and escaped from Xianyuan Wudi. This was the thing that Xianyuan Wudi could not accept the most. Therefore, from then on, Xianyuan Wudi became extremely selfish, which led to the things that happened later. Hearing Xianyuan Wudi's roar, Chunling's expression did not change much. He only sighed and said, "Xianyuan Wudi, it's not that I took Qingqing away. It's just that Qingqing never liked you. Moreover, do you still remember what happened in the Spirit Wind City?" Spirit Wind City? Hearing this, Xianyuan Wudi's expression changed. Seeing this, Chunling sneered. "Looks like you haven't forgotten. Back then, in the Spirit Wind City, you drugged Qingqing. In the end, Qingqing was taken away by a black-clothed man. Do you know that the black-clothed man was me?" Back then, Xianyuan Wudi invited Xia Qingqing to travel the human territory. Along the way, Xianyuan Wudi pursued Xia Qingqing. However, Xia Qingqing did not agree. After countless failed attempts, when the 2 of them arrived at the Spirit Wind City, Xianyuan Wudi lost his patience and was ready to take a risk. He thought that since it was difficult to move Xia Qingqing's heart, he would get her body first. Therefore, in the Spirit Wind City, Xianyuan Wudi drugged Xia Qingqing and was ready to take her body by force. However, at the critical moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared and took Xia Qingqing away. At that time, Chunling did not have feelings for Xia Qingqing. She never knew that the black-clothed man was Chunling. Furthermore, Chunling never told Xianyuan Wudi about what happened back then, nor did he blame him. This was because in Chunling's heart, Xianyuan Wudi was still his brother. Although there were some flaws in his character, Chunling believed that one day, Xianyuan Wudi would be able to change. Because of this, not only did Chunling not blame Xianyuan Wudi, he even prevented Xia Qingqing from causing trouble for Xianyuan Wudi. "It's you." Xianyuan Wudi stared at Chunling in shock. Seeing Xianyuan Wudi's gaze, Chunling's eyes flashed with regret. "Yes, it's me. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1498. A hint of regret flashed in his eyes. In fact, Chunling knew that Xianyuan Wudi was jealous of him from the beginning. Moreover, this jealousy grew stronger as he grew older. In the end, it almost became Xianyuan Wudi's obsession, causing his character to become distorted. Ever since he was young, Xianyuan Wudi wanted to compete with Chunling in everything. However, he was crushed by Chunling every time without exception. As for Chunling, he actually had no intention of suppressing Xianyuan Wudi at all. With Chunling's character, he did not care much about reputation. If Xianyuan Wudi were to surpass him in everything, Chunling would not be jealous at all. He would only feel happy for him. He once thought that he could use his sincerity to change Xianyuan Wudi's mind. Unfortunately, Chunling did not succeed in the end. Instead, it caused a disaster and even harmed Xianyuan Songtao in the end. Chunling said coldly as he looked at Xianyuan Wudi. Regret flashed past his eyes. "If I knew this would happen, I would not have kept you alive back then. I would have crippled you." He regretted being too soft-hearted back then. That was why Xia Qingqing died and Xianyuan Songtao was harmed. He still remembered what Xia Qingqing had said before. Xianyuan Wudi is vicious and selfish. Keeping him alive would not benefit the Xianyuan clan. That was what Xia Qingqing had said to Chunling back then. She wanted to persuade Chunling to kill or at least cripple Xianyuan Wudi. Unfortunately, not only did Chunling not accept Xia Qingqing's words, he even scolded Xia Qingqing fiercely. Xianyuan Wudi is my brother. I don't want to hear such words in the future. Back then, everyone had seen how much Chunling had taken care of Xianyuan Wudi. It was a pity that the farmer and the snake could not warm up the heart. No matter how hard one tried, it would always be cold and could not be changed. Hearing Chunling's words, Xianyuan Wudi came back to his senses and smiled coldly. What's the point of saying this now? Xianyuan Ling, you have indeed surprised me. After so many years, you actually have the chance to stand in front of me again. But so what? You wouldn't be a match for me even if you were at your peak. Moreover, you're only at the sage great perfection realm now. You're no different from an ant in front of me now. Xianyuan Ling, since you were lucky enough to be reborn, you shouldn't appear in front of me again. You shouldn't care about Xianyuan Songtao. Everything is already destined. Do you think you can change anything? You've been like this since the beginning, always thinking that you're infallible. Today, it seems that I can make up for the regret in my heart and personally send you on your way. Everything that had happened in the past was no longer clear. No matter who was right or wrong, no matter who let down who, it was no longer important. After so many years, Chunling was reborn, and Xianyuan Wudi had become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, one of the three the great sage of the human race. Things changed with the passage of time. Chunling was no longer the Xianyuan Ling who could suppress Xianyuan Wudi in everything. At this time, in the eyes of Xianyuan Wudi, Chunling was just an ant that could be crushed at will. The excitement in his heart slowly calmed down. He admitted that because he suddenly saw Chunling, Xianyuan Wudi's heart was fluctuating greatly. But so what? The former Xianyuan Ling was already dead, and the current Chunling was not his opponent at all. The killing intent in his eyes began to gather continuously again. Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chunling and said coldly, Xianyuan Ling, you didn't take the path to heaven, but you barged into hell. Since you're courting death, then don't blame me. I could kill you once in the past. Today I can kill you for the second time. As Xianyuan Wudi said, he directly shot out a palm. It was a casual palm without using the slightest martial skill. However, with Xianyuan Wudi's cultivation of great sage great perfection, even if it was just a casual blow, it was not something that Chunling could resist at this time. A monstrous aura instantly locked onto Chunling, making his body unable to move at all. He could only watch Xianyuan Wudi's palm print fall. The cultivation gap was too big. Just the aura alone was not something that Chunling could contend with. Seeing Xianyuan Wudi's palm strike fiercely pressing down on him, Chunling's eyes did not have the slightest trace of fear. Even the hatred he had when he saw Xianyuan Wudi earlier had completely disappeared, replaced by calmness, like an ancient well without ripples. Looking calmly at Xianyuan Wudi's palm print falling, Chunling secretly said in his heart, Qingqing, maybe I'm really too soft-hearted. Until now, I still regard Wudi as my own brother. Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi were not biological brothers, but their fathers were biological brothers, which was Xianyuan Songtao's biological younger brother. Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi's fathers were biological brothers with Xianyuan Songtao. However, because of a battle with the Ghost Clan, their fathers died in battle. Then, Xianyuan Songtao became their father and raised them. Therefore, since they were young, Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi could be said to have grown up together. Their relationship was no different from that of biological brothers. Chunling still remembered that when Xianyuan Wudi was a child, although he was called Wudi, he was very timid. Because of the loss of his father, Xianyuan Wudi was a little inferior when he was young. At that time, other clansmen of the Xianyuan clan bullied him. Xianyuan Wudi did not dare to fight back. Every time, it was Chen Ling who stood up for him to seek justice. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi might have a little jealousy of Chen Ling. There was only a strong brotherly love. He relied on Chen Ling as a big brother. At the moment of his death, Chen Ling's heart was not filled with hatred. He could not help but think of his childhood. He unconsciously looked at Xianyuan Wudi, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Wudi, it was a simple word, but when he heard this, Xianyuan Wudi's movements paused, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. In this world, there were only two people who would call Xianyuan Wudi that. One was Xianyuan Songtao, and the other was Chen Ling. Xianyuan Songtao was Xianyuan Wudi's uncle, and also his father. Chen Ling was his big brother, but now both of them had died at his hands. Although Xianyuan Songtao was not dead, after so many years, what was the difference between him and being dead? Although he was conflicted, Xianyuan Wudi quickly shouted with a ferocious expression, "Xianyuan Ling, die!" In the end, Xianyuan Wudi still did not hold back. Just as the palm strike was about to reach Chen Ling, just as Chen Ling himself thought that he was about to die, the void was suddenly torn open. Then, Xing Zhantian's figure shot out explosively, instantly appearing in front of Chen Ling. He also struck out with a palm strike, fiercely colliding with Xianyuan Wudi's palm strike, blocking it for Chen Ling. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote, recommend this. Chapter 1499. Xing Zhantian's sudden appearance caused Xianyuan Wudi's expression to change. He originally thought that he could kill Chen Ling with a single palm strike, but who would have thought that Xing Zhantian would step forward at the last moment? Both of them had the same cultivation and battle prowess. Therefore, Xing Zhantian was able to block Xianyuan Wudi's casual attack with ease. Their palms collided fiercely, and a terrifying shockwave spread out. Chen Ling was protected by Xing Zhantian, so he was not affected by the shockwave. After a while, the terrifying shockwave slowly disappeared. Xing Zhantian looked at Xianyuan Wudi indifferently and said, "Xianyuan Wudi, as the great sage, don't you think it's a little too degrading to attack a junior? Moreover, have you forgotten that Chen Ling is a holy son of the holy rankings? Do you want to die with him?" Chen Ling was a holy son of the holy rankings. Hearing this, Xianyuan Wudi's eyes flashed with endless hatred. Previously, because of his impulsiveness and exposure, Xianyuan Wudi had almost forgotten that Chen Ling was a holy son of the holy rankings. It could be said that Xing Zhantian's appearance not only saved Chen Ling, but also saved Xianyuan Wudi. Just like before, if Xianyuan Wudi's palm strike had succeeded in killing Chen Ling, there was no doubt that Xianyuan Wudi would have died with him. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, the hatred in Xianyuan Wudi's eyes did not diminish, but there was also a hint of relief. On the other hand, Chen Ling, who was behind Xing Zhantian, had a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Chen Ling naturally knew that he was a holy son of the holy rankings. He also knew what would happen if Xianyuan Wudi killed him, but that was actually what Chen Ling was thinking. In Chen Ling's opinion, he did not have the ability to kill Xianyuan Wudi with his own hand. Even if he did, Chen Ling would not be able to do it. As such, it would be better for the two of them to die together. Let Xianyuan Wudi kill him, and then the heavenly way would send down divine punishment to kill Xianyuan Wudi. This might be the best outcome for Chen Ling, and also the best outcome for Xianyuan Wudi. Unfortunately, this thought was completely shattered by the appearance of Xing Zhantian. Xianyuan Wudi had already regained his senses. Xianyuan Wudi looked coldly at Chen Ling. He felt a lingering fear in his heart. At the same time, he suddenly remembered that although Chen Ling's cultivation was only at the sage great perfection realm and he was nothing more than an ant in his eyes, he was still Xianyuan Ling. Back then, Xianyuan Ling not only had extremely high innate talent and combat strength, but his wisdom was also extremely heaven-defying. Things have already come to this point, and you still want to scheme against me. Xianyuan Wudi thought coldly and felt a lingering fear. Just as Xianyuan Wudi was feeling a lingering fear and Chen Ling was feeling disappointed, Xiao Chen appeared beside Chen Ling. Xingzhan Tian was naturally called over by Xiao Chen. Because he was afraid that Chen Ling would be in danger, Xiao Chen immediately called for Xingzhan Tian to rush over. Now it seemed that he had arrived in time. However, in response to Xiao Chen's arrival, Chen Ling said indifferently, "Third brother, you shouldn't have come. For some things, it's best to end things here." Hearing Chen Ling's words, Xiao Chen immediately understood what Chen Ling meant. It seemed that Chen Ling wanted to perish together with Xianyuan Wudi. Without much of a change in expression, Xiao Chen looked at Chen Ling and said, "You know that I won't let anything happen to you." Chen Ling wanted to perish together with Xianyuan Wudi. How could Xiao Chen agree? In any case, Xiao Chen couldn't let Chen Ling sacrifice his own life to perish together with Xianyuan Wudi. Chen Ling knew what Xiao Chen meant and understood Chen Ling's feelings for him. However, at this time, Chen Ling helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "Perhaps some things can only be truly resolved when you die. I don't care about that. Since we're brothers, I can't just watch as something happens to you." Xiao Chen replied. The two spoke softly. Hearing the conversation between Xiao Chen and Chen Ling, Xingzhan Tian felt a little strange. From Chen Ling's words, it seemed that he was very familiar with Xianyuan Wudi. However, this was impossible. Xianyuan Wudi was from the same generation as Xingzhan Tian. He was much older than Chen Ling. At that age, he was probably old enough to be Chen Ling's ancestor. He couldn't understand at all. It was impossible for Chen Ling and Xianyuan Wudi to have any interactions. However, from Chen Ling's tone, it seemed that he had known Xianyuan Wudi for a long time. Xingzhan Tian was puzzled. At this time, Xianyuan Wudi only had eyes for Chen Ling. With Xingzhan Tian's arrival, Xianyuan Wudi didn't know if Chen Ling would expose Xianyuan Songtao's matter. No, it should be said that Chen Ling would expose Xianyuan Songtao's matter. Then, Chen Ling would completely expose Xianyuan Wudi's true identity. Xianyuan Wudi would no longer have a place in the human race. At that time, not only would the Yin-Yang sect and the Haotian alliance look down on him, but the Xianyuan clan would also view him as a disgrace. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would have no other choice but to betray the human race. Of course, with Xianyuan Wudi's strength, it wasn't impossible for him to slaughter the entire Xianyuan clan. But so what? At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would still be alone, deserted by his friends and family. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Xianyuan Wudi's face. However, no matter how one looked at it, this smile seemed bleak and lifeless. With a bleak smile, Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chen Ling and said, "You've won again. You must be very proud now. You can finally kill me. With Xingzhan Tian here, it would be very difficult for Xianyuan Wudi to kill Chen Ling." However, Chen Ling only needed to say a single word to destroy Xianyuan Wudi's reputation. A loss was still a loss. Xianyuan Wudi had been competitive all his life. He had chased after Chen Ling all his life. He had even used all sorts of methods to become stronger and surpass Chen Ling. However, in the end, Xianyuan Wudi was still one step behind. Of course, this loss wasn't because of Chen Ling. It was because of the will of the heavens. Having given up on struggling, Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chen Ling. At the same time, Chen Ling looked at Xianyuan Wudi. After a while, Chen Ling did something that Xianyuan Wudi had never expected. Chen Ling turned to Xiao Chen and said indifferently, "Third brother, let's go." Having said that, Chen Ling carried the ice coffin and tore through the void to leave. Upon seeing this, Xiao Chen hurriedly followed. He didn't expect Chen Ling to not say anything. Looking at Chen Ling's back, Xianyuan Wudi was stunned. However, His eyes turned blood-red in an instant. He looked in the direction where Chen Ling left and saw a spatial crack that was slowly closing up. Not only that, but he could also vaguely see Chen Ling carrying the ice coffin on his back. Staring at Chen Ling's back, Xianyuan Wudi completely forgot that Xing Zhan Tian was beside him. He angrily roared, "Are you pitying me? I don't need your pity." Xianyuan Wudi's angry roar sounded, but Chen Ling ignored it and didn't even turn his head. Seeing this, 2 streams of tears flowed down from Xianyuan Wudi's eyes. He was like a child who had been wronged. "Xianyuan Ling, stop right there. I don't need your pity. I don't need, please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1500. Chen Ling didn't say a word and left with Xiao Chen. Xianyuan Wudi roared madly. He knew that Chen Ling could completely ruin his reputation, but he didn't do so in the end. This made Xianyuan Wudi very uncomfortable, as if Chen Ling was giving him charity. Xianyuan Wudi was a very proud person, there was no doubt about that. Therefore, he thought that Chen Ling was giving him charity and pitying him. From Xianyuan Wudi's point of view, Chen Ling had always been like this. In front of Chen Ling, Xianyuan Wudi's brilliance would be overshadowed. In the end, Chen Ling would pity him and give him charity. This was something that Xianyuan Wudi couldn't accept. However, did Chen Ling really have the intention of giving charity to Xianyuan Wudi? Obviously not. The reason why he didn't choose to tell Xianyuan Songtao was actually because Chen Ling's heart softened. Although he hated Xianyuan Wudi, in his heart, Xianyuan Wudi was still his younger brother. Especially when Xianyuan Wudi attacked just now, before Chen Ling's death, scenes of their childhood appeared in his mind. It was really difficult for Chen Ling to kill Xianyuan Wudi. Since young, Chen Ling and Xianyuan Wudi had both lost their father. Both of them stepped onto the path of martial arts under the guidance of Xianyuan Songtao. However, Xianyuan Songtao, who was still the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, naturally didn't have too much time to accompany them. Therefore, both of them spent their childhood accompanying each other. To Xianyuan Wudi, Chen Ling was both a brother and a father. On the contrary, in Chen Ling's eyes, Xianyuan Wudi was like a child who didn't grow up. Xianyuan Wudi loved to fight and compete. After so many years, Xianyuan Wudi still hadn't changed. He was now the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, the great sage, but in Chen Ling's eyes, he was still like a child. In the void, Xianyuan Wudi roared angrily, but tears flowed from his eyes. At the side, Xing Zhantian's expression became very interesting. Just now, what did Xianyuan Wudi say? Xianyuan Ling, Xing Zhantian, naturally knew Xianyuan Ling's name because he and Xianyuan Ling were of the same generation. Back then, when Xianyuan Ling was still alive, he was one of the 3 elders of the Xianyuan clan, and Xing Zhantian was also one of the 3 elders of the Haotian alliance. Xing Zhantian stared at Xianyuan Wudi in astonishment and said in a deep voice, "Xianyuan Wudi, what did you say?" Xing Zhantian was also a great sage emperor, so he had also guessed something in his heart. Although reincarnation was bizarre for Xing Zhantian, it was not an unacceptable fact. Facing Zzz was a ZSTSSS whose completely, and Chen S's was S. In fact, perhaps even Xianyuan Wudi didn't know how important Chen Ling was to him. Xianyuan Wudi only knew that back then, when he heard the news of Chen Ling being killed by the Dragon Emperor, although Xianyuan Wudi was happy, he was more sorrowful. He clearly hoped that Chen Ling would die because that way, Xianyuan Wudi wouldn't be suppressed by Chen Ling anymore and wouldn't have to live under Chen Ling's radiance. It was a pity that Chen Ling was indeed dead. However, Xianyuan Wudi didn't feel any joy of victory at all. It was as though his heart had been hollowed out. His heart was empty, so from then on, Xianyuan Wudi sealed his heart completely. He thought that time would slowly heal everything about Chen Ling, but it was a pity that it didn't happen. It wasn't until he met Chun Ling again that Xianyuan Wudi realized that he couldn't ask Chun Ling for help. Or perhaps, he didn't only hate Chun Ling, but also their brotherly relationship. It was as if he had lost his soul. Seeing Xianyuan Wudi in such a state, Xing Zhantian let out a soft sigh. Then, without saying anything more, he moved and chased after Chun Ling and Xiao Chun. With Xing Zhantian's speed, he naturally caught up with the two of them very quickly. Looking at Chun Ling in front of him, Xing Zhantian said with a complicated expression, "I thought you were dead." It wasn't the first time he met Chun Ling previously. Xing Zhantian didn't know Chun Ling's identity. Now that he had guessed it, Xing Zhantian naturally had a myriad of emotions in his heart. Although Xing Zhantian and Chun Ling didn't have much interaction, the two of them still had a lot of contact back then. After all, at that time, they were both hailed as the most promising people in their respective forces to break through to the Great Sage realm. They could be said to be competitors. Unfortunately, the result was Chun Ling's background, while Xing Zhantian became the leader of the Haotian alliance and broke through to the Great Sage realm. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, Chun Ling no longer had the intention to hide it. He helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "I did die, but I came back to life." Chun Ling's words undoubtedly admitted his identity. Seeing this, Xing Zhantian sighed softly and said, "Many years have passed. I didn't expect you and I would meet again." After the news of Chun Ling's death spread out, Xing Zhantian sighed. In his opinion, a person like Chun Ling shouldn't have fallen. With his talent, stepping into the Great Sage realm was a sure thing. Unfortunately, the will of the heavens played tricks on people. Seeing Xing Zhantian's sigh, Chun Ling smiled and said, "Let's return to Haotian City first." Xing Zhantian's timely arrival saved Chun Ling's life, but things weren't over yet. Chun Ling still needed to open the ice coffin. However, Chun Ling didn't tell Xing Zhantian about the ice coffin, and Xing Zhantian had no intention of asking. He didn't even see what was in the ice coffin. He had covered the ice coffin with a piece of black cloth, so Xing Zhantian couldn't see Xianyuan Songtao in the ice coffin. On the way back to Haotian City, Xing Zhantian didn't stay for long and left directly. Although he had a lot to say to Chun Ling when he saw him again, he could see that Chun Ling still had things to deal with, so Xing Zhantian didn't want to continue disturbing him. After Xing Zhantian left, Chun Ling and Xiao Chen came to the courtyard. They only notified Qin Shuru and the other two women, and didn't alert anyone else. Then, the two of them came to the study. At this time, Chun Ling lifted the black cloth on the ice coffin, and Xiao Chen saw Xianyuan Songtao lying in the ice coffin. Seeing this, Xiao Chen asked curiously, "Who is this?" Hearing this, Chun Ling looked coldly at Xianyuan Songtao in the ice coffin and said, "My and Xianyuan Wudi's uncle, the previous patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation." Chapter 1501. The previous patriarch of the Xianyuan clan? Chun Ling and Xianyuan Wudi's uncle? Xiao Chen was slightly stunned when he heard this. Chun Ling smiled bitterly. "I never thought that I would be able to see my uncle again in this lifetime." Chun Ling was touched, but Xiao Chen didn't know what to say. However, Chun Ling took the initiative to tell Xiao Chen about Xianyuan Songtao, including how Xianyuan Songtao became like this. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with surprise when he heard Chun Ling's words. "Then why did you let Xianyuan Wudi go?" He never thought that Xianyuan Songtao was harmed by Xianyuan Wudi. As such, Xiao Chen didn't think too much about it and immediately replied. With the relationship between Xiao Chen and Chun Ling, they naturally didn't need to think too much when they spoke. Moreover, Xiao Chen couldn't understand why Chun Ling didn't say a word when Chun Ling had a way to ruin Xianyuan Wudi's reputation. He even covered the ice coffin with a black cloth. Now, Chun Ling only needed to announce Xianyuan Songtao's matter, and Xianyuan Wudi would be finished. So what if he was the great sage? There would definitely be countless people in the Xianyuan clan who wouldn't accept him. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would be alone. Xiao Chen's words carried a hint of blame. Chen Ling smiled and said, "He's my younger brother after all, just like you." Younger brother? Big brother, he's the one who wants to kill you. Xiao Chen retorted mercilessly. Xianyuan Wudi had indeed wanted to kill Chen Ling. If Xiao Chen and Xing Zhantian hadn't arrived in time, the two of them would have perished together. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chen Ling smiled bitterly and helplessly. "Third brother, I know and understand what you mean. However, there are some things that are completely different from what you imagine when you really have to do it yourself. I once thought of killing Xianyuan Wudi personally for revenge, but when it came to meeting him, I couldn't do it no matter what. It's like if I wanted to kill you, third brother, would you be able to kill me? If one day Chen Ling and Xiao Chen had a falling out, and Chen Ling wanted to kill Xiao Chen, what would Xiao Chen do at that time? Should he kill Chen Ling mercilessly, or should he be like Chen Ling, soft-hearted and unable to kill him?" Xiao Chen did not know how to answer Chen Ling's question, because he had never thought that there would be a day when he and Chen Ling would become enemies. Seeing Xiao Chen's silence, Chen Ling smiled helplessly. "Some things are easier said than done, especially between brothers. How can it be broken so easily?" Chen Ling couldn't bear to kill Xianyuan Wudi. Even though he had a way to destroy Xianyuan Wudi's reputation, Chen Ling couldn't bring himself to do it. Hearing Chen Ling's words, Xiao Chen was silent for a while. Finally, he sighed and said, "Big brother, do you think there will be a day when we become enemies?" Because of Chen Ling's question, Xiao Chen tried to think about it. If there was a day when he and Chen Ling became enemies because of some things, what would happen then? He didn't dare to imagine. Or rather, Xiao Chen himself didn't have an answer. Hearing Xiao Chen's question, Chen Ling smiled and said, "No, you're different from Wudi." As he spoke, Chen Ling slowly walked to the window. At this time, the sun was slowly rising. Looking at the rising sun, Chen Ling seemed to be answering Xiao Chen's question, but also seemed to be talking to himself. "Wudi has been chasing after me since he was young. I knew this from the beginning. Originally, I thought this was good, at least it gave Wudi a goal. After all, at that time, he and I had just lost our father. But who would have thought that in the end, this chasing gradually turned into jealousy and hatred? Wudi hated me. He hated me for taking away everything that should have belonged to him. But he didn't know that this wasn't my intention. If he wanted it, I would have given it all to him without hesitation. Status, fame, power, I could have given it all to him. Unfortunately, it was too late. Wudi was like a child. He wanted to be strong, but he was also very childish. He was very naive, but he was also very jealous. He was very emotional, but he was also very impulsive. All this time, Wudi was like a follower behind me. But third brother, you're different. You're not the same as Wudi. Your talent is outstanding, even above mine. You and I have gone through many twists and turns. Along the way, there's nothing that we can't share. So, you'll never become Wudi. Chen Ling and Xiao Chen would never become like Xianyuan Ling and Xianyuan Wudi." Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "All right, anyway, I can't win against Big Brother. Who asked you to live two lives? In short, no matter what decision you make, I'll support you. However, if Xianyuan Wudi still wants to kill you next time, even if Big Brother doesn't do it, I won't let him off easily." As brothers, how could they reason clearly? Perhaps if this matter happened to Xiao Chen would definitely kill Xianyuan Wudi without hesitation. However, Chen Ling's heart softened. Thus, Xiao Chen could only choose to support him. Just like Xiao Chen said, no matter what decision Chen Ling made, Xiao Chen would support him. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chen Ling smiled and then shifted his gaze to the ice coffin. Seeing this, Xiao Chen also came to Chen Ling's side and looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who was lying quietly in the ice coffin. Is he still alive? Perhaps he used a secret technique to seal his consciousness and entered a state of suspended animation. Hearing this, Chen Ling replied indifferently. In fact, all these years, Xianyuan Songtao had been sleeping in the ice coffin. It wasn't completely without benefits because he had been in such a state. In fact, after so many years, Xianyuan Songtao's life force had been very little. This was actually the biggest benefit. It wasn't difficult to wake Xianyuan Songtao up. He only needed to open the ice coffin and then use his own spiritual energy to undo the seal on Xianyuan Songtao's consciousness. At that time, Xianyuan Songtao would be able to wake up. The storage ring in his hand flashed, and then, a round jade tablet appeared in Chen Ling's hand. This jade tablet was like a piece of ice, transparent and pure. This was the key to this hotel, and it was also the thing that Xianyuan Wudi had been painstakingly looking for. In Clear Sky City, Chen Ling was temporarily safe, so at this time, he let down his guard. Looking at Xianyuan Songtao in the ice coffin, Chen Ling slowly said, "Uncle, I came late and caused you to suffer. I am unfilial." As he spoke, Chen Ling directly pressed the jade tablet on the surface of the ice coffin. As the jade tablet and the ice coffin came into contact, suddenly, a light blue light slowly lit up from the jade tablet. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1502. When the jade token came into contact with the ice coffin, a pale blue light slowly radiated from the jade token. Then, a shocking scene appeared. The jade token seemed to melt, and it slowly merged into the ice coffin. At the same time, as the jade token melted, the ice coffin slowly opened. First, a small gap appeared. However, as soon as the gap appeared, an extremely cold air instantly rushed towards them. This cold air made Xiao Chen and Chen Ling feel extremely cold. The two of them were very strong. If it were other ordinary saints, they would have been frozen by this cold air. Feeling the bone-piercing cold, Xiao Chen and Chen Ling both circulated the spiritual energy in their bodies to resist. The ice coffin continued to open. After about 10 breaths, the ice coffin was completely opened, and Xianyuan Songtao appeared in front of Chen Ling. While resisting the extreme cold air, he looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who was lying peacefully in the ice coffin. His white hair, coupled with his skin that was as soft as a baby's, made Xianyuan Songtao look extremely extraordinary. Of course, the only flaw was that Xianyuan Songtao's face was completely pale. This was not strange. After all, after sleeping for so many years, Xianyuan Songtao's blood had already stopped flowing. It was also because Xianyuan Songtao had the cultivation of the great saint realm. If it was someone else, they would have already died. There was no heartbeat, no breathing, just like a dead person. After waiting for the cold air to dissipate, Chen Ling and Xiao Chen moved together and carried Xianyuan Songtao out of the ice coffin. Now that the ice coffin had been opened, the next step was to wake Xianyuan Songtao up. This step was not difficult for Chen Ling. He only needed to use his spiritual energy to break the seal in Xianyuan Songtao's saint soul to wake Xianyuan Songtao up. After carrying Xianyuan Songtao to a chair, Xiao Chen supported Xianyuan Songtao's body, while Chen Ling pointed a finger at Xianyuan Songtao's forehead. Then, spiritual energy entered Xianyuan Songtao's body through his forehead and quickly broke the seal in his saint's soul. It did not take much effort to break through the seal. Then, Chen Ling and Xiao Chen waited for Xianyuan Songtao's attribute. Gradually, color began to return to Xianyuan Songtao's face, and his heart began to beat slowly. Around 1 joss stick's worth of time later, Xianyuan Songtao opened his eyes. In the beginning, there was no emotion in his eyes. Perhaps it was because he had been asleep for too long, but Xianyuan Songtao found it difficult to adapt. As time passed, Xianyuan Songtao's consciousness completely awakened. When he saw Chen Ling standing in front of him, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Xianyuan Songtao said with some difficulty. You are. He didn't recognize Chunling. After all, Chunling had already died once. Hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Chunling smiled and said, Uncle, I'm late. Eldest uncle? Xianyuan Songtao was taken aback. Then, he began to carefully size up Chunling. After a long while, Xianyuan Songtao said excitedly, you're Ling uncle, it's me. Chunling nodded and replied. Seeing that Xianyuan Songtao had woken up safely, Chunling was naturally happy. On the other hand, Xianyuan Songtao was even more excited to see Chunling. As he had been asleep for too long, Xianyuan Songtao's body was still very weak. He couldn't unleash his strength at all. He still needed to recuperate for a period of time before he could fully recover. However, this didn't stop Xianyuan Songtao from feeling excited. Back then, when Xianyuan Ling died, Xianyuan Songtao was so furious that he almost went to the dragon race to fight the Dragon Emperor. Extremely emotional, Xianyuan Songtao held Chunling's hand and said tearfully, Ling it's great that you're not dead. It's great that you're fine. It's great that you're fine. Chunling's death back then was a huge blow to Xianyuan Songtao. It was easy to imagine how Xianyuan Songtao felt now that he could see Chunling again. However, after hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Chunling chuckled and said, Uncle, I'm actually someone who has died once. Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao was puzzled. Then, Chunling told Xianyuan Songtao about what happened back then, how he was reborn, and everything that happened in the North Star boundary. After a full 2 hours, Chunling finally finished. After hearing these things, Xianyuan Songtao sighed and said, Ling I didn't expect you to have such a fortuitous encounter. As he spoke, Xianyuan Songtao looked at Shao Chen, who was sitting beside Chunling. A gentle smile flashed across his eyes. He already knew about Shao Chen from Chunling. He also knew that the two of them came from the small heavenly Chun continent and went through a lot of hardships together. The relationship between the two of them was almost like that of brothers. Of course, Chunling also told Xianyuan Songtao about Long Qing. He also knew that Chunling had a second sister who was the current princess of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Emperor doted on her a lot. It could be said that he held her in his hands and was afraid that she would melt in his mouth. Looking at Shao Chen with a gentle gaze, Xianyuan Songtao smiled and said, Shao Chen, since you and Ling are brothers, you will be my family in the future. If you don't mind, you can call me uncle like Ling in the future. Xianyuan Songtao's words clearly approved of Chunling. Hearing this, Shao Chen did not refuse. He stood up and bowed to Xianyuan Songtao and said, Nephew greets uncle. Good, good, good. Since today is the first time Chun and I have met, I will naturally give you a greeting gift. Chun do you like this ice coffin? Uncle will give it to you. Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao smiled happily and said good 3 times. This ice coffin was definitely an extraordinary treasure. Even the great sage would not be able to destroy it. Hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Shao Chen did not refuse and immediately nodded in agreement. Moreover, because there were no signs of life within the ice coffin, Shao Chen easily put the ice coffin into his spatial ring. Previously, Chunling was unable to put the ice coffin into his spatial ring because Xianyuan Songtao was sleeping in the ice coffin. Now that Xianyuan Songtao was awake, the ice coffin could naturally be put into his spatial ring. After Shao Chen put down the ice coffin, Xianyuan Songtao's expression changed slightly. He looked at Chunling with a complicated expression and said, Ling you've already met Wudi? Since Chunling had saved him, he should have already met Xianyuan Wudi. Hearing this, Chunling nodded and said, I've met him, but I still can't bring myself to do it. Then, Chunling told Xianyuan Songtao about what had happened. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1503. After hearing Chen Ling's story, Xianyuan Songtao sighed and said, "You were like this back then. Too soft-hearted." Xianyuan Songtao could not be more familiar with Chen Ling's personality. He could be decisive in killing outsiders, but to his own people, especially his family, it could be said that he was kind to his bones. It was precisely because he understood Chen Ling very well that Xianyuan Songtao was not surprised by Chen Ling's decision earlier. After all, this was Chen Ling. Xianyuan Songtao sighed and said to Chen Ling, "Don't worry about Wudi. But Ling since you're back, don't hide it anymore. Don't call yourself Chen Ling anymore. After all, Xianyuan Ling is your real name. Do you understand?" Chen Ling's return put Xianyuan Songtao in a good mood. As for Xianyuan Wudi, Xianyuan Songtao did not know what to do. However, in Xianyuan Songtao's heart, since Chen Ling had returned, he shouldn't continue using the name Chen Ling. There was no need to hide his identity either, because with Xianyuan Songtao present, no one in the human race would be able to harm Dao Chen Ling again. Xianyuan Songtao wouldn't let what had happened in the past happen again. Chen Ling did not think too much about it. He nodded and said, "I'll listen to uncle." Chen Ling, no, he should be called Xianyuan Ling, nodded. However, while the two of them were talking, Xiao Chen's expression changed. He looked at the door. Following Xiao Chen's gaze, Xing Zhantian's voice came from outside, "Brother Xianyuan, I came uninvited. Please don't take offense." Xing Zhantian had come. In fact, Xing Zhantian had also sensed a strange aura. He followed the aura and came here. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, Xiao Chen did not reply. Instead, he looked at Xianyuan Ling. Seeing this, Xianyuan Ling looked at Xianyuan Songtao. In the end, Xianyuan Songtao nodded slightly. Seeing Xianyuan Songtao nod, Xianyuan Ling stood up and opened the door. He said to Xing Zhantian, "Please come in." After saying that, he stepped aside to make way for Xing Zhantian. However, Xing Zhantian did not move. Instead, he looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who was sitting on the main seat in the room. Looking at Xianyuan Songtao, Xing Zhantian looked as if he had seen a ghost. As the great sage, Xing Zhantian had actually lost his composure. One could only imagine how much shock Xianyuan Songtao's appearance had given him. Previously, it was Xianyuan Ling. Now, it was Xianyuan Songtao. Xing Zhantian couldn't help but feel a little depressed. What's going on with the Xianyuan clan? Why are people who have been dead for so many years coming back to life one after another? First, it was Xianyuan Ling. Xing Zhantian had not recovered from the shock of Xianyuan Ling's appearance, but now, he actually saw the previous head of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Songtao, in Xianyuan Ling's room. It was as if he had seen a ghost. Facing Xianyuan Songtao, Xing Zhantian felt as if he had been cursed. In the end, it was Xianyuan Ling who spoke. Xing Zhantian came back to his senses and asked, "Leader Xing, what's wrong?" After hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Xing Zhantian came back to his senses. Then, he shook his head helplessly and said, "Brother Xianyuan, there's no need to be so polite between us. Let me, Zhantian. But your Xianyuan clan really makes me feel a little." Xing Zhantian originally wanted to surprise me, but when the words came to his mouth, he felt that it wasn't good to say it, so he didn't say it. After speaking with Xianyuan Ling, Xing Zhantian stepped into the room and bowed to Xianyuan Songtao, who was sitting on the main seat. "Greetings, Senior Xianyuan." Yinyangzi, Xing Zhantian, and Xianyuan Wudi were the great sage of the human race. According to seniority, Xing Zhantian and Xianyuan Wudi were of the same generation, while Yinyangzi was of the same generation as Xianyuan Songtao. Therefore, when Xing Zhantian saw Xianyuan Songtao, he addressed him as senior. As for the current situation of the human race and the War of the 100 Races, Xianyuan Songtao had heard about it from Xianyuan Ling. He also knew that Xing Zhantian was one of the 3 great sages of the human race. Facing Xing Zhan Tian, Xianyuan Songtao said with a smile, "In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. The prodigies of the past have all grown up. No need to be so polite to an old man like me." After so many years, Xing Zhan Tian was no longer the young junior of the past. He had grown into a true the great sage. It could be said that the current Xing Zhan Tian and Xianyuan Songtao could be treated as equals. After all, in the world of martial artists, although seniority was also important, strength was more important. After inviting Xing Zhan Tian to take a seat, Xing Zhan Tian cleverly did not delve into why Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling were still alive. After all, this was a private matter of the Xianyuan clan. If an outsider wanted to get to the bottom of it, it would be somewhat annoying. However, Xing Zhan Tian soon became ecstatic after his initial shock that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. This was because Xianyuan Songtao's existence was absolutely great news for the human race. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about what it means to have another the great sage during the War of the 100 Races. I think everyone knows this. Originally, the human race had 3 great saint emperors. However, with the addition of Xianyuan Songtao, the human race now had 4 great saint emperors. With one more great saint emperor, the human race's strength had improved greatly. However, Xing Zhan Tian clearly did not know about Xianyuan Wudi, which was why he thought so. Xing Zhan Tian did not expect Xianyuan Songtao to still be alive. While they were meeting in Haotian City, Xianyuan Wudi, who was in the Xianyuan clan, did not return to the Xianyuan clan's manor. Instead, he went to a lake in the depths of Xiushan. The surface of the lake was not big. It was very small and nobody could see it. Xianyuan Wudi was sitting under a tree by the lake, holding a flagon of wine in his hand. His eyes were full of confusion and he only knew how to drink. Xianyuan Wudi's mood was very complicated when he saw Xianyuan Ling again. At the same time, a thought that Xianyuan Wudi did not dare to imagine appeared in his mind. Did I really do something wrong? Xianyuan Wudi kept thinking about this question in his mind. Thinking back to his life, Xianyuan Wudi actually had such a question about himself. Was it wrong? This was a question that Xianyuan Wudi had never thought about before. But now, this question was constantly circling Xianyuan Wudi's mind, making it impossible for him to ignore it. Please collect, please vote, please recommend me. Chapter 1504. His eyes were full of doubts. Xianyuan Wudi's heart was in a mess, a complete mess. While drinking, he looked at the lake in front of him. The lake was in Xiushan, not far from the manor of the Xianyuan clan. He remembered that when they were young, Xianyuan Wudi and Xianyuan Ling liked to play here. Because there was no one else here, the 2 brothers could play here unbridled. At that time, Xianyuan Ling and Xianyuan Wudi were not experts. They were just 2 children. In the clan, except for Xianyuan Songtao, the other clansmen were not very friendly to them. At that time, they were not like now. Not only were they strong, but they also had boundless power, especially Xianyuan Wudi. Compared with when he was young, Xianyuan Wudi was now the great sage. At the same time, he was also the head of the Xianyuan clan. No one could bully him like when he was young. But was Xianyuan Wudi happy? No, especially after coming here, Xianyuan Wudi only felt emptiness. He didn't know how many years it had been since he came to this lake. It seemed that Xianyuan Wudi hadn't come here since Xianyuan Ling died. He didn't want to come here, and he was afraid of coming here. Because every time he saw this lake, he would remember bits and pieces of him and Xianyuan Ling, and the scene of the 2 brothers playing here. At that time, although Xianyuan Wudi was young and didn't have much power, he was very happy. Xianyuan Ling always accompanied him and protected him. His eyes were a little blurred. He thought that he had forgotten the past, but in the end, he was deceiving himself. Drinking hard liquor, Xianyuan Wudi didn't know whether what he had been doing was right or wrong. He didn't know whether this kind of life was what he wanted. Cultivation and power. Could Xianyuan Wudi really give up everything for these two things? While Xianyuan Wudi was reflecting, in Haotian City, Xing Zhantian, Xianyuan Ling, Xianyuan Songtao, and Xiao Chen were also happily chatting. Except for the internal affairs of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Ling briefly told Xing Zhantian the rest. Of course, Xianyuan Ling did not say a word about what Xianyuan Wudi had done, nor did he say that Xianyuan Ling had killed him back then. Xianyuan Ling still couldn't let go of his brotherly love with Xianyuan Wudi. Although Xiao Chen didn't understand, he naturally wouldn't point it out at this time. As mentioned before, since they were brothers, no matter what decision Xianyuan Ling made, Xiao Chen would choose to support him. Even though in Xiao Chen's opinion, Xianyuan Ling's choice was too kind and soft-hearted, Xiao Chen still did not say much. Rebirth was a very mysterious thing. However, after hearing Xianyuan Ling's explanation, Xing Zhantian quickly accepted it and looked at Xianyuan Ling with a smile. Brother Xianyuan, as the saying goes, those who survive a great disaster are bound to have good fortune in the future. It seems that this is true. As he spoke, Xing Zhantian took the initiative to look at Xiao Chen. He was obviously hinting at Xiao Chen and Long Qing. Xianyuan Ling was indeed reborn, but it was also because of this that he was able to meet Xiao Chen and Long Qing. No matter who it was, in Xing Zhantian's opinion, they would definitely have great achievements in the future, especially Xiao Chen. Needless to say, Long Qing was now the little princess of the Dragon Clan. Even the human clan knew that the Dragon Emperor doted on his little daughter a little too much. It could be said that as long as Long Qing said a word, the Dragon Emperor would probably agree to anything. Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing were siblings. If Xianyuan Ling needed help in the future, given the relationship between the two, Long Qing would obviously not stand by and do nothing. In other words, Xianyuan Ling was completely supported by the Dragon Clan. In addition to Long Qing, Xiao Chen was even more so. He was now ranked 4th on the Saint rankings. With such strength and talent, it was certain that he would break through to the great Saint realm in the future. Moreover, for now, Xiao Chen's prestige among the younger generation of the human clan was absolutely unmatched. It had far surpassed Xianyuan Baijian's prestige back then. Countless of the younger generation of the human clan idolized Xiao Chen. Moreover, Yinyangzi was cultivating Xiao Chen as his successor. The Dragon Clan, the Taiyang sect, it could be said that Xianyuan Ling's two brothers were not simple people. This was what Xing Zhantian meant by a blessing in disguise. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, Xianyuan Ling smiled. Then, he exchanged glances with Xiao Chen. Perhaps it was because today's matter was too shocking, or perhaps it was because so many years had passed and they suddenly saw old friends again, so everyone chatted for a long time. In the end, Soexin gathered together and drank. They chatted from day to night. Xianyuan Songtao did not speak much. Basically, it was Xianyuan Ling and Xing Zhantian who were talking. When night fell, Xing Zhantian got up and left. Xianyuan Ling personally sent him off and returned to his room. The drunkenness on his face had completely dissipated. He looked at Xianyuan Songtao and said, "Uncle, if Wudi comes, let me talk to him alone." After sending Xing Zhantian off, Xianyuan Ling suddenly mentioned Xianyuan Wudi. In fact, Xianyuan Ling had already guessed that Xianyuan Wudi would definitely come tonight. Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao nodded slightly. Seeing this, Xianyuan Ling looked at Xiao Chen. In response, Xiao Chen nodded helplessly. "I'm going to cultivate." Since Xianyuan Ling had his own thoughts, Xiao Chen did not say anything more. Forget it, let him be. However, if Xianyuan Wudi dared to hurt Xianyuan Ling again, Xiao Chen swore that he would definitely make him pay the price. He got up and left Xianyuan Ling's room. Then, Xianyuan Songtao went to a room next door to rest, leaving Xian Yuan Ling alone to wait. The door was not closed, and Xian Yuan Ling did not rest. The night gradually deepened, and the entire Haotian city was completely quiet at this time. It was in such a deep and quiet night that suddenly, a black-clothed figure silently appeared at the door of Xian Yuan Ling's room. This person was none other than Xian Yuan Wudi. As expected, Xian Yuan Wudi came. Looking at Xian Yuan Ling, who had been waiting for him, Xian Yuan Wudi said in a low voice. Then, he stepped into the room. Seeing Xian Yuan Wudi coming, Xian Yuan Ling said calmly, "Wudi, you still came. Uncle has woken up. He's just next door." He took the initiative to tell Xian Yuan Songtao. Hearing this, a strange look flashed in Xian Yuan Wudi's eyes. He paused for a moment before coming back to his senses. Then, he came to the chair next to Xian Yuan Ling and sat down. At the same time, he waved his hand gently and the door closed. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1505. Xian Yuan Wudi came late at night. No one knew what happened between him and Xian Yuan Ling. However, after Xian Yuan Wudi talked with Xian Yuan Ling, he went to see Xian Yuan Songtao. The next morning, Xian Yuan Wudi left without doing anything to Xian Yuan Ling or Xian Yuan Songtao. Apart from Xian Yuan Ling, Xian Yuan Songtao, and Xian Yuan Wudi, no one else knew about what happened last night. The next morning, Xiao Qin came to Xian Yuan Ling's residence early. Seeing that Xian Yuan Ling was fine, Xiao Qin was relieved. At the same time, Xiao Qin did not ask about what happened last night. Xiao Qin was not a nosy person. Therefore, since Xian Yuan Ling was fine, Xiao Qin was not interested in what he and Xian Yuan Wudi talked about last night. However, after Xiao Qin was relieved, only 2 hours later, a shocking news quickly spread among the upper echelons of the human clan. It was that Xian Yuan Wudi had betrayed the clan. The news came from within the Xian Yuan clan. It was said that an elder of the Xian Yuan clan saw Xian Yuan Wudi take away the Xian Yuan clan's inherited treasure and flee to the territory of the Ghost clan. As the patriarch of the Xian Yuan clan and one of the 3 the great sage of the human clan, Xian Yuan Wudi had betrayed the clan. This was a fatal blow to the human clan. At first, many people did not believe that Xian Yuan Wudi would betray the clan and flee to the Ghost clan. However, in the end, after many investigations and the 3 elders of the Xian Yuan clan personally returned to the Xian Yuan clan, the final result was that Xian Yuan Wudi really took away the Xian Yuan wheel, the inherited treasure of the Xian Yuan clan. It was said that the Xian Yuan wheel was a treasure that had been passed down since ancient times. It had already surpassed the Saint realm. It was a treasure that could both attack and defend. Xian Yuan Wudi had suddenly taken away the Xian Yuan wheel and entered the territory of the Ghost clan. There was news from the border that Xian Yuan Wudi had entered the territory of the Ghost clan alone. All these proved that Xian Yuan Wudi had betrayed his clan. However, this matter came too suddenly. For a moment, many human race warriors found it hard to accept, especially the people of Xian Yuan clan. They couldn't face this fact. After all, Xian Yuan Wudi was the family lord of Xian Yuan clan. The betrayal of the family lord was the heaviest blow for Xian Yuan clan. In Xiao Chen's courtyard, Xing Zhan Tian came in person again and told Xiao, Ling and Xian Yuan Songtao the truth about Xian Yuan Wudi. Ling. Hearing this, Xiao Chen was stunned. Then, he looked at Xian Yuan Ling. Xian Yuan Wudi must have come last night. After meeting Xian Yuan Ling for a meter, he betrayed the clan. What did this have to do with Xian Yuan Ling? However, facing Xiao Chen's gaze, Xian Yuan Ling was very calm. At the same time, Xian Yuan Ling seemed to have expected Xian Yuan Wudi's betrayal. He was not surprised at all. Xian Yuan Songtao was the same. Seeing Xian Yuan Ling's calm face, Xing Zhan Tian said gloomily, Brother Xian Yuan, such a big thing has happened. Why are you still so calm? The matter has already happened. What's the point of being anxious? Let's think about how to deal with it first. That's the main problem, Xianyuan Ling said in a deep voice. Since Xianyuan Wudi had betrayed the clan, it was useless to be anxious at this time. The most important thing now was to find a way to stabilize the situation and pacify the hearts of the people, especially the people of the Xianyuan clan. Hearing this, Xing Zhantian nodded and said, "Brother Xuanyuan's words are reasonable." Hearing Brother Xuanyuan's words, could it be that you already have a way? Xianyuan Ling was very calm. Obviously, he had a card up his sleeve. Facing Xing Zhantian's question, Xianyuan Ling did not keep him in suspense. "I do have a way, but I still need Brother Xing's cooperation." Immediately, Xianyuan Ling voiced his thoughts. Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan had made everyone anxious, especially the people of the Xianyuan clan. Therefore, the first thing to solve now was to stabilize the hearts of the people and pacify them. The easiest way to stabilize the hearts of the people was to announce that Xianyuan Songtao and himself were still alive. At that time, Mr. Xianyuan Songtao would be equivalent to giving the Xianyuan clan, who had lost their backbone, another stabilizing force. At that time, Xianyuan Songtao would be able to temporarily become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. With Xianyuan Songtao's reputation in the Xianyuan clan, this was not a problem at all. At the same time, because Xianyuan Songtao was also the great sage, this could somewhat offset the influence of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan. This would allow the people of the other major forces to be more stable. To announce that Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling were still alive, this would require the help of the Haotian Alliance and Xing Zhantian's support. Hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Xing Zhantian pondered for a moment, then quickly nodded and said, "All right, it's decided. This is the best way. However, when does Brother Xianyuan plan to start? Let's wait for a few more days. Uncle's body is still weak, and he needs to rest for 2 days. If we announce it now, with Uncle's current condition, it won't be good for him," said Xianyuan Ling. Xianyuan Songtao's body was still very weak. Since he wanted to stabilize the hearts of the people, Xianyuan Songtao naturally could not appear in such a state. Otherwise, wouldn't he be looked down upon by the people? At that time, not only would it be useless, but it would also be self-defeating. Therefore, he needed to wait for a few more days before announcing the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling. Hearing this, Xing Zhantian nodded and said, "All right, Brother Xianyuan, if you need anything in the next few days, you don't have to be courteous with me. Feel free to look for me for healing pills." Xing Zhantian naturally hoped that Xianyuan Songtao could recover as soon as possible because it would be beneficial for the entire human clan. After the matter was settled, Xing Zhantian did not stay for long and quickly left. This was because Enyangzi had gone to the Night Clan, and the great sage of the entire human clan was only Xing Zhantian. However, Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan had caused Xing Zhantian a headache. The matter was settled for the time being. As for Xiao Chen, Xianyuan Ling did not ask him to do anything. In this regard, Xiao Chen knew what Xianyuan Ling meant. Originally, with Xiao Chen's current status, he could have mobilized the power of the Yin and Yang sects to help Xianyuan Ling. However, many people in the human clan knew about the relationship between the two. There was no benefit for Xiao Chen to help Xianyuan Ling at this time. Others would think that Xianyuan Ling was deliberately pretending to be someone else. Moreover, with Xing Zhantian alone, this matter was actually enough. Please collect, vote, recommend. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.